All right, we are live. We are back. It is a weekend at BurnEye. It is Easter. Hope everybody had a good Friday. And back by popular demand, two of the most popular and up-and-coming Tartarian researchers. We have Shem in the top left, a Tartarian Truth, and we have Luke, Ancient Historia, in the top right.
In the blue corner.
The blue corner. Luke recovered from his last war wounds. Shout out Dustin in the chat, Grandmaster UV, Esoteric Alchemist, Mr. Wanderer, Ridson and Kenki, oh my god, okay, I'm sorry. Slaughtering names, I'm just going to stop while I'm ahead. Before we went live, we were talking and discussing about how each of your guys' research, Shem essentially first starting with like debunking some Tartarian stuff, but finding real Tartarian evidence, and then these evidences of hidden, suppressed, rewritten history and real Tartarian civilizations. And I'm gonna shut up, stop mumbling, and let you guys take it away.
I'm just liking the idea that Shem started this like, I'm gonna take the piss out of these guys, and then halfway through he's like, oh shit, this is starting to make a bit of sense, you know.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I did support the hidden history narrative beforehand, but the research that I've been finding now actually didn't come from looking for Tartaria, which is interesting to me. It just kept popping up, so I started looking into it more. Like, oh, so what is this? And
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to keep my head canon that you were just reading the book. Like,
you had to have interest in alternative
Okay.
history to get into it in the first place, right? Like, it's like you're not gonna, right. So, Luke, did you want to talk about some of what you're doing, and then Shem into it, or vice versa?
Well, I mean, what am I doing right now? Not much. Chilling. What are you doing? Oh, you mean research-wise? Right.
So, you know, like we were doing pyramids beforehand, and now I'm getting into dolmens a little bit, as well as the pyramids, the earth grids, Antiquitech, and before, I still believe in atmospheric electricity and some of the ancient cathedrals for that purposes. But after my talk with Matt over at Cultivate Elevate on electroculture, and that a lot of the Antiquitech could possibly be from that or for those purposes. And then shout out, of course, to Paul Cook in Geopolymer, and that we see such things as these dolmens that look like they would more likely be geopolymer as opposed to carved or cut or melted of sorts. But then there's the megalithic dolmens as well, which fascinate me because they're found in North America, especially in Montana, U.S., Northwest there, and then right above that is Alberta, where I am, and what I've always seen my whole life out in the mountains.
That picture was definitely taken on an etchy sketch, wasn't it? Look at that, high quality.
Right, yeah, I screwed up and saved all the thumbnails instead of the actual pictures. So the next episode, I will have the high res of all of these. But then
maybe have more than 5 pixels on the next picture.
Right? Well, hey, look, it's not buffering, so we're doing all right.
It looks like Pokemon graphics.
So these dolmens are like, these are in the UK, I believe, or Ireland or Scotland, somewhere out in the Isles there. And that there's these mound cave giant mounds. So the giant dolmens first, but then
whoa. Now that looks like it should be a mission, doesn't it?
Right? Or coming out of Middle Earth there in the Elven lands.
Reminds me of Afghanistan, or maybe like Turkey, Cappadocia.
Right? And then so also this one here is down in, I believe, Peru. What was told of these Caucasian forest cloud people and their mummified beings. Also, where there's the
Isn't that thing in Spirited Away? I swear that's the thing from Spirited Away. Has anyone seen Spirited Away? I swear that looks exactly like something I've seen in it.
It does
So
look
this
similar
is
to that.
what I was more talking about or trying to describe there. The mounds, but these
the
are
burial
in
mounds.
the UK. Yeah, burial mounds, and they're in from the UK Isles, all throughout Western, Eastern Europe, as well as all throughout North America, South America, and
Well, we weren't going to
found.
get into this straight away, but since you brought it up, interestingly, in Wales they have a star mound map, which was based on the sky. Obviously, they built mounds all over the place corresponding to different stars, and based on what that star means, so if it's the swan, Cygnus, you know, it has something to do with that buried under the mounds. And these things are all over Wales, and they're huge. And they used to bury their kings under these mounds as well. Well, this is why it's interesting, is because what we were talking about with the Welsh being in America, in I think it was West Virginia, they found a load, and definitely Kentucky, they found a load of these mounds which resembled exactly these mounds that the Welsh had been building in around like the 6th, 7th, 8th century AD.
So I'm glad you're bringing this up, and it has to do with this larger megalithic mound, as well as the rune stones and megalithic monolithic stones and their astrological alignments, and that they were this realm-wide star mapping system that gets into the geoglyphology that I've been uncovering and studying of the Ferrum Foundation, as well as the Russians have discovered this as well. And basically you can map yourself around the world from the stars, and that these ancient megalithic sites and buildings that they had are actually for calendars and maps of the realm. And I suspect, I have the thesis that they would meet up at certain, wrong way. Trying to find the pictures of the
you just want to keep sharing my logo,
stones.
don't you? Keep advertising me.
Both of you guys is right. Oh, just hustling it. How many dolems can you handle in a minute? 100?
Well, this stuff literally looks like it's out of Lord of the Rings, doesn't it?
The astrological calendars, and that there's a lot of the monuments, monoliths. Here we go. These monoliths at all of these sites too, and that they're actually astrological calendars, and that probably the chiefs of each realm or each tribe, whether it was like Moorish, whether it was like Native American, like Western Plains Indian, or whether it was like Inuit, or whether it was like a Slavic Viking, or whether it was like an Egyptian Sumerian, the travelers of the world would, in these times, probably met up at these sites during the equinoxes and solstices, and would have their tribal negotiations or their different exchanges, and that they're literally everywhere, and they have the notches and stuff. So it has to do with the counting of the stars and the times and the different positions of the heavenly bodies, and that then all these rune stones, see, right? So it's like, it's an astrological calendar for the meetings that they'd probably have at these sites. And then you have the different languages carved in on the stones, found at all of these places, these different parts, because it was them recording their secret history or their actual history of the times. And that's just what I'm putting forward with this, and I will let it get back to all of your guys' research that essentially corroborates these worldwide trading.
Well, anyway, while we're on the topic, I noticed somebody in the comments mentioning Madoc, and I noticed somebody called Modoc, so very close. But there was also somebody called Myrick, which is what we were talking about before with the Myrick stuff. So I don't know if Shem wants to take control back and start getting onto our pictures whilst I quickly natter on about what I was talking about before with the Madoc app Myrig thing. So the interesting thing about the Madoc kingdom that we just saw on that stone was, and some people might have heard me talk about this before, but the guy Madoc, he's called Madoc ap Myrig. Now, ap Myrig means son of Myrig, like we're talking about, and Myrig is another name for Maurice or Myrick or Merrick. So here, Merrick, in fact, is a very modernized version. So there is a guy called Richard ap Merrick, which comes from Myrig, who some people believe is the reason that America was called America, because it's ap America, right? This Richard guy obviously isn't the guy, but Madoc ap America had a brother who he sailed over with called Ririd, not Richard, but Ririd, very close. So it's Ririd ap Myrick, and this guy's Madoc kingdom. So basically, when you hear the name America, it comes from ap Myrica, the sons of Myrig. You see? So that's where that name literally comes from, is
right.
ap America.
It's finding out like literally everywhere. And shout out to Ben Waking Up with Analog, aka the Archivist, as well as Ranhu Ahu, and all of his work that they've been doing, showing that there's the different names of these same people in the different world histories and supposed legends, and that it's just lost in the translation.
This is really interesting, by the way, on this stone. So you have to read about this to really understand it. But the way that this is actually written is so that when you read it one way, it says Madoc, but when you read it the other way, it says kingdom, right? And that the way that they've done that is, to go into detail, it's all about a specific use of one of the symbols to turn one word into two words. Right, that you read Madoc kingdom, and that is actually, it doesn't sound amazing, but it really is. It's something incredible, and I think I included with that the article, so I might have to post that at some point for people, because it possibly is that one. I think it could be, but there's loads of stuff that goes into it. Very interesting stuff. It's been researched for many years, but it just doesn't really get mainstream attention, because what people like to do in mainstream media or history is they don't like to admit when they're wrong, but they'll slowly change the history. So when stuff like this comes out, they'll say no, that's not true, but then they'll slowly start to alter things to say, okay, yeah, we admit that this is the case, now we admit that that's the case. And it won't be until about 40-50 years in the future, when we're all dead, that the history actually changes.
Well, what do you think is the reasoning for that? Is it economical, or?
I think, well, yeah, it's multiple reasons. Political and religious, I think, was the main original reasons for twisting. Not just, I guess political kind of encompasses military, but it's a standard thing, isn't it? When you take over a country, well, not you personally, Shem, I'm not suggesting you go out on the weekend invading, but when you take over a country, you've got a load of people that suddenly have to understand that you're in charge. So, it's like when America takes over Afghanistan. It's like, going over there and changing their history to show that the American soldiers are actually the children of Achilles, who is the real king of the area. And that's kind of what they did. People, Tamerlane supposedly did it, claimed that he was descended from Samson, long hair Samson.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They'd be like, I want to be king. They say, why? Why should you be king? Because I'm the nephew of Achilles. And they'd be like, oh, nice. And that's just how it kind of worked. So that goes even deeper, to the point where they would change the histories. I mean, you can see this in Egypt. Is it Ramesses II? I'm blanking. It's the one that went around changing everything to put his own name on it. And he literally went. Go on. Did you know it? Or but one of them went around.
The guy who changed he changed the religion too, or are you just saying that he put?
No, he just literally put his names on everything, made it sound like that he'd, and I think he probably did canonize himself as a god. But the point is people would do this. They go around changing history, and if someone went, wait a minute, that's not right, they'd cut your head off, and they'd be like, no, none of that. And we see this all the time. So,
To me,
Cool.
it doesn't even seem like it's really necessarily hidden, though, because I mean, this information really isn't that hard to find. You just read about it, and it starts talking about things like that. The red flag for me comes from when the mainstream narrative, like the common knowledge, is that people like the Mongolian Empire were like uncivilized, just barbarian people,
right?
Or even people in the 1800s. They claim that they're uneducated and they're
the
stupid.
cavemen that somehow carved these caves that we can't carve, you know, they were more barbaric and had no technology.
Well, you've got right. The
What?
easiest example is America, right? We all know that the Native Americans were portrayed as the bad guys, even as kids in England. Well, when I was a kid, you know, I'm 28 now. So when I was a kid, Cowboys versus Indians was a game you would play, you know, and no one wanted to be the Indians. You all wanted to be the Cowboys, and you're literally playing genocide. Can you imagine going out like, right, I will be the Nazis, you be the Jews, like fucking hell? But that's what it is, isn't it? They did a genocide,
well, much,
like,
but the entire cowboy thing seems like it's pretty much just like propaganda to cover up for something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look at the movies, the Western movies. They make it cool. Probably. Can you imagine doing that about Hitler? Like, you know, really, can you imagine doing the narrative swap and doing Western style movies about the Nazis?
Now.
And
they're calling Putin,
they do it.
The new Hitler. Like they're doing that swap all over again. And like, so they're claiming these people were just in teepees, but they could build like that. Like it's ridiculous.
And much more. Like even back in like the, I don't know, even in like the 11th century, 13th century, stuff like that, they had civilization was just so much more advanced than what people understand for some reason. And that's why I'm saying it's sketchy that it's history, it's available for anyone to read, but the narrative, the movies, culture, our culture in general pushes the idea that they're savages and that they're so stupid. So why is that? And does that have anything to do with the erasure of Tartaria or anything?
Well, I guess I don't know whether I think we all want something bigger, don't we? But maybe it does just boil down to hiding war crimes, because you do see with things like the CIA document that accused the Soviet Union of changing history and hiding their aggressions on the Tatars. But you see that exact same thing all over the world. You know, Britain had an empire, and it definitely didn't have an empire by being nice. You know, you don't turn up and be a gentleman and get the keys to the city. You murder, you kill a lot of people, and yet
same with America.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you don't go to school and learn about how much of a murderous, horrible country you live in. You know, you go to school and you learn. Well, for English people, you learn about like all the old kings. They're so boring. It's just talking about this king takes over and this king. And it's just all nonsense. It's all anglicized nonsense to propagate the German kingdoms that are actually in control of the country. And things like hiding the ancient British people, that is as simple as hiding war crimes. Or there's an alternative, like for example, Alan Wilson believes that Christianity, the original Christianity, actually started in Britain and went to Rome afterwards with I think it was King Caradoc in about 46 AD, who was captured and taken over to Rome. And the Roman emperor, instead of kill him, he actually really got on with Caradoc, and he was like, you know what, you're a not bad dude. I want you to live here with me, and you know, your family, you can live here. And he did, and he married, like his kids married into the emperor's family and everything. They were really close, and they apparently brought Christianity over with them, and they were telling the stories of Jesus, like, oh yeah, this Jesus guy was great, and he's back in Wales, apparently. So maybe it is genuinely a complete change from religious point of view, because we know that the New Testament in particular is focused on these stories, and it could be a narrative switch of moving everything to the Middle East, making it all about, the Holy Roman Empire's kind of papal states view of, the Pope, the change of history, this control on the world. Maybe it is that, because they want you to believe that they are the original holy people, when in reality they've destroyed the original holy people.
Very possible. You do find the same religious practices worldwide, and for some reason they also don't include that a lot of religions coexisted together in earlier times without fighting. They would just take taxes from each other, which is also a very modern way of living.
So,
I mean,
you just reminded me with the taxes, but under pre-World War I Islamic law, both the synagogue and the churches were allowed to live under the mosques as long as their towers were shorter than the mosque towers, and that they paid tribute, but they were in complete peaceful coexistence. I remember my Israeli Middle Eastern religious studies professor teaching me that. But it brought back up what you guys were talking about before the show. When you mentioned that there was like that 3-stripe thing with the Christian, Muslim, Jewish priests.
Yeah, that was Shem.
Yeah, Shem, do you want to talk about that, brother?
it was basically just making a connection because in Marco Polo they talk about a certain city. I don't know if you can hear me for some reason.
Yeah, can you?
Okay, so in Marco Polo they're talking about a certain city where people were tattooed, and I guess the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims would have different amount of lines on their face depending on which face they were. I think Christians had 3 lines on their face. So, but these people are all underneath the Mongolian Empire, which is known as the Tartar Empire or the Yuan Chinese dynasty. So what they do a lot in history is they give multiple names to the same thing. That way it's really hard to understand. Like if you find one source that says this and one source that says this, they're talking about the same thing, but you don't realize it because they're using various names. Another example of this is Beijing, China. They call it Peiping, they call it Peking, they call it Kanbalik, they call it Chambaluk, they call it Kambaluk. So it's like you have like 6 different names I just named right there, just for one city.
Peking duck, to be fair, is some good food. So, but yeah, like bringing up Peking. So when I was going into the articles you wanted to talk about, one of the most interesting things I found out about from it was just getting a narrative of like when these invasions were taking place. And I noticed, I can't put an exact date on it, but we spoke about it last night. Was it September 1860 or something like that, when the British and the French allies reached Peking, and the emperor had fled to Tartary, and he was like, okay, I'm off, and he went to Tartary. And it just shows that in 1860, we were taking over these places, and yet it seems like 10 years later they were just on their own again. They're doing their own thing. And it's like we invade, and then we go, oh yeah, good invasion, lads.
That's not necessarily true. That what they do is they put in their puppet government. Basically, it's all about trade, is what it seems it comes down to. Because after that, in 1900, in that same area, you had the Boxer Rebellion, which, even though all these nations supposedly didn't get along back then, they all went to China with like a force of like 20,000 troops and stopped the Boxer Rebellion, because they were basically trying to kick out all these foreign diplomats who were taking advantage of the country. So you have like Russia, France, Germany, the UK, the United States, all teaming up to go to China in 1900 to stop this rebellion. And then later on in World War II, that same emperor, that same dynasty that you're describing, was put back in power by the Japanese in China and Manchuria, in that area, like by Korea. And for some reason, the mainstream narrative claims that Japan was just annihilating China and it was so evil and like it was a puppet state, but it was really just them restoring.
Oh, so you're saying World War I, the whole Manchuria stuff was them restoring the actual emperor of Tartary, as in emperor of China? Sorry.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I can't find it again, but I did see in a documentary at one point that they called Emperor Puyi, which is the last emperor of China. They did say that he was a Manchu Chinese, but they also said he was the last Tartar emperor in the documentary. But I can't find it again.
So official narrative. And sorry, I meant World War II.
Oh, and sorry, shout out Paul. Paul, I just sent you the link if you want to join. And
So the official narrative with it was
before you continue, and Shem, if either of you wanted to restream this and go live on your channels, you just hit the share it with my audience in the top right corner. We're already half hour in. I don't know if either of you wanted to do that. We forgot to remind you before going live. Yeah, and if Paul, you wanted to join, do the same. Up to you.
Paul, you better get your ass on, bro. Oh, he's got a face mask on, bro. Get on.
Face mask. But so
that's a euphemism.
Okay, so what you're looking at. Wait, what were you talking about, Luke? Do you want to continue that, or?
Oh no, Bernie killed my train of thought.
Okay,
I've only
so
got so many brain cells left.
the Boxer Rebellion thing was interesting just because all those nations came together and they were working together against the people of China. Keep in mind, the Boxers were the people of China trying to overthrow foreign invaders who were taking advantage of their country, right? So all these foreign invaders came together, even though they didn't work together, allegedly, and they quelled this rebellion. And then, like you were saying, World War II, the Japanese were trying to restore that empire, the emperor, to power, but it didn't work out really well.
Right. I mean, that's a very interesting theory, isn't it?
Well,
because I mean, just it's a bit of a diversion, but even in World War II, we have the Germans being called the Huns, and you think about, you know, Attila the Hun, and this is why actually I reckon you'd get on with the flamenco theory, because David Ung Jr. He's got a very specific his personal opinion on things. He's very convincing in some aspects. There's other aspects that I completely disagree with him on, but some areas he's absolutely brilliant. So I would definitely suggest you watch. I've got one interview with him, which isn't that great because my audio is terrible back then. But if you go on Zertus's channel or Raphael's, which is at 26, he's got loads.
Has been talking to Ewan about getting us a collab panel discussion, and Shem, and when we get you on there with him, that's what we're going to try to do, is get and Luke, David Ewan Jr. onto StreamYard so we can have the panel discussion with him, because he does bring a very good point forward, as does Zertus, showing those ancient Arabic writings and sigils that are in fact just what look like the most advanced barcodes of today. It's nuts how advanced some of that stuff goes. And sorry for keep interrupting.
But it's all right. Yeah, no, I was just talking about the flamenco side of theory, because if you look at the Huns, for example, when was Attila the Hun? 400, was it, AD?
It's somewhere before 1000. I don't know the exact.
Yeah, I think it's 5th century, 400 to 500. If someone wants to correct me, feel free. I might be wrong. I've got so many dates in my head. I usually do mix up a few. But yeah, Attila the Hun. Yet somehow, 1600 years later, we're still referring to the Germans in World War II as the Huns. Now, the theory being with flamenco is that, and this again fits with what you said about there being multiple versions and you don't realize they're the same. They're called phantom copies. You'll find phantoms of everyone, everywhere. And a good example of this is the Madoc again. So we talked about Madoc. He went over to America. Our records say it was 570 AD. Now, that sign that you saw says that it was 1170 AD. And you'll also find, if you go into it, that the Madoc that arrived there has a different name. He is called Prince Madoc, but he's Prince Madoc ap Gwynedd. And he's, another Welsh king, apparently in the 1100s. And this was one of his sons. Right, so he's not a son of Arthur, not a brother of Arthur. Sorry, he's a brother called Ririd, but not Arthur. So this guy is a phantom of the original. He's basically the same. He's another Prince Madoc with essentially the same story, same this, same that, but it's just a copy with 600 years between. And you'll find these phantoms everywhere. They copy and paste people and entire civilizations, and they put it in someone else's history 100 years before. And so it's what you're saying is true, but it's like they've done it purposely. They've used the same stories all over the place.
I agree. That's where the really out there conspiracy theories come in. Though, for example, the one reason that you could find these stories all over the world, the same thing over and over and over again, is because maybe there really is a group of people who control everything, and they have created these textbooks and everything, and they're literally just telling their family story. But they're also adjusting it slightly around the world just so they can see which way works better to control people.
So what you're saying is it's true, but so the craziness comes from the global aspect, right? The globalization of what you're kind of proposing. But we've seen it small scale. We see it small scale today, right? How many people come back from China saying, well, that was a very free society. You know, history was flowing, right? Because they controlled their narrative. I mean, obviously, a lot of that might be propaganda. It might not be as bad as we think, but especially when we have our own versions. But another example of this is just to go to the Welsh, right? How many times in the Welsh history has their language been attacked, etc.? Henry, I think it was the fifth, or it might have been the second. There's so many, but one of the Henrys, he banned writing utensils in Wales. You couldn't have any writing utensils. If you were found to have anything to do with writing, you'd be killed, right? Henry VIII, he banned Welsh completely in the schools, and he sent a load of teachers over to take over. He took a load of Welsh kingdoms away, annexed them, things that we see Russia doing today. He annexed Welsh kingdoms into Britain, and it was completely fine. And then in the 1800s, in 1846, the British government, they went on a campaign talking about how Welsh teachers were drug addicts, how they were talking nonsense to their students, and how they needed a complete overhaul.
Enough to drive you to a loony bin by chance?
Well, put it this way. They literally, okay, so bear in mind, 90% of these kids spoke Cymric, right? Welsh, but Cymric Welsh, not even Latinicized Welsh, okay? This is the original Welsh. These people don't speak English. He literally, our government replaced every single Welsh teacher in Wales with an English-speaking teacher. And the kids couldn't speak English. Like 10% of them could speak English. And these guys didn't speak Welsh. And they replaced all the Welsh textbooks with English textbooks, right? So that is the perfect example of, you wonder if there is someone who controls it all and creates all the textbooks. Well, this is a small version, but it literally is. They went, right, get all those textbooks, make them English, cut out all the bits we don't want.
This isn't the only time that's happened either. There's like, if you look at almost any society, what you're describing happens. And there are organizations in the past that describe this as being their plan to get power, because for some reason there's books that exist that have these organizations who describe step by step what they're going to do to take over each country. So I guess the only optimistic thing about what we're describing now is that it's possible that this group only came to power very recently and they can actually be defeated again. Or
I think it's around 1700s.
That's actually what Michelle Gibson believes too. Sorry to interject there, and she brings that up. Yes.
What year does she say? What year does she think it happened in?
She thinks just a couple hundred years ago, like 100.
I think it's around. It's just. It's around American independence time, I think. 1700s, 1712-ish.
Illuminati confirmed when the Freemasons
wait, 1712 was
77 or whatever.
1712 was independence, wasn't it?
1776, but that's a whole day thing. That's all.
Which
even
was
after
1712?
that, though, like,
is that French?
1812 is the War of 1812. Is some say it was it was when the British took control of America again. It's a conspiracy theory, but
well, yeah, there's loads of stuff that goes really far into it. But just to finish on that Welsh thing, right? Okay, so this is how nuts, okay, these people are with the control. Britain, or the United Kingdom, is obviously Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, but we're all one country. You know, it's not like we're supposed to be separate. We're really one, United Kingdom. And in the Houses of Parliament, we have representatives, obviously, from different places. They don't always have to turn up. But the Welsh, obviously, they come to the same Houses of Parliament as us. Did you know it's actually banned to speak Welsh in the Houses of Parliament? It's banned. Not
surprising, but
right?
Suspicious. So I got to I had like a breakthrough thought of this, the monoliths, and that this wiggly line here is where the moon or the sun is in like the cycle, and then the cross is like on the horizon where you are something, and connecting to their star charts with these. And
that cross actually looks like the Iron Cross that Germany used.
That's what. Yeah, and like that's what these symbols are, is like for their mapping and their the positioning of the different planets and the suns and moons are.
Can I just finish my thought before we continue?
Yes,
because this is only short. So it's to do with this, right? It's to do with this Parliament, right? So no other language is banned in Parliament. You can turn up in Parliament if you're invited and speak in your home tongue, and in fact, everyone will applaud and go, so brave, turning up and just speaking in your own language. No fucking clue what she's saying, but fucking brave, right? And that is, that's welcome. But if somebody stands up who is from Wales, who is the MP for a place in Wales and speaks Welsh, that's banned, right? And now this is where it's funny. In about, I think it was 1993, the MP for Newport in Wales stood up, opened a book, and starts reading. And the Speaker of the House, that's the person that shouts at people and kicks them out of Parliament if they break the rules, she screams at him, "You know that you're not allowed to speak that language in here." She's livid. And he smiles and he says, "This is a 14th century English book." He was reading 14th century English, and this woman was like, "That's fucking Welsh," right? And that just shows, because that's why they're trying to hide it, because the original English was the Welsh, because they don't want you to know. Because even hearing Old English, you're like, wait, is that Welsh? No, it's just Old English. But that shows why, because that's where it's come from.
It's interesting because when I look into all this stuff, I guess the origin of a lot of our civilization comes from the Franks, which are like Germanic tribes who eventually like tried to inherit, I guess, the Roman Empire. They tried to revive the Western Roman Empire, and they eventually spread pretty far. And they say that like even the French language originates from these tribes. So I guess like,
well, I'll tell you what, you'll have a great chat with David Ing Jr. because he'll tell you that French was only spoken by like a couple of percent of the people in France in like the early 1900s, and it's something that's been added in, which there is, to be fair, sounds crazy, right? But when you consider how much percentage of these populations were educated back in the day, you can understand how, well, yeah, I suppose the peasants probably spoke a completely different language to the educated, and it's not something you really think about. But the idea that,
the royals spoke another on top of the educated.
Well, yeah, so if there's a French, like, if no one's teaching you the French, how do you speak the French? And I think
it seemed to have been not only, so I found information that says it was the common language, but then I've also found information that said it was spoke amongst the royals. Like, it was up until literally World War II, I found evidence that shows that French was the main language for international communication, and they still actually use it to this day in the United Nations. So
yeah,
it's like
Indiana Joe in the comments has said they reckon that you can decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs, which is, that is something you can 100% do. You can decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs using just the Welsh language. It's actually and it's easy if you know Welsh. I don't, so it's not easy for me. But
my mom's watching and says I'm 1/8 Welsh.
Oh, well, that means you're 1/8 tribe of Israel.
Welsh, but Welsh?
No, literally. So it's a pictogram. So the way that the system works for hieroglyphs is if it's a lion, it means two things. So if you were spelling the name Alexander, it wouldn't just be Alexander. It would be using things that mean something. So the A would mean something for like words. So just, as an English example, it'd be like, if my name Luke it was like, the lucky, I don't know, the lucky ugly king of England, right? And that's what it means. It's and the pictures would reference that. So you'd
handsome.
So you'd know that it said Luke, but you'd also get some information from it. And that's how it works. And that's the reason that hieroglyphs don't quite make sense. If you look into hieroglyphs, they will literally be like, this means L, but over here it doesn't. And that's because it doesn't work over here. So we had to change what it means. And that's, if you employ Welsh, suddenly it all fits together. And you're like, okay. See, it's just a pictogram system. So if you get somebody that can speak fluent Welsh and get them a Welsh to English dictionary, you can sit here and get any hieroglyphs and decode them. And there is a book that you can find online to do it.
Fascinating thought of how, like, I've been trying to interpret this pictographic symbolic language of alchemy and whatnot, but essentially what it could be is these hieroglyph symbols that they just naturally can flow into and be deciphered into several languages at once, possibly. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And Welsh being one of them.
I mean, it's well. This is where it gets really weird because Welsh hasn't changed. Ironically, as a result of all the attempts to destroy it, there's a difference. It's the original Cymric. It actually didn't change that much. Do you know what I mean? Because they isolated it so much and it didn't spread and it didn't actually change that much. But that said, one of the results of what they've done is if you actually go to Wales, you can take somebody from one village and go 50 miles down the road and get someone from another village, and they might struggle to fucking know what each other's saying. That is one result. But the writing has stayed the same. So, but one change is you got to remember that Latinicizing everything is what does a lot of the damage. So, for example, many of you won't know this, but if you look up what a Welsh word actually looks like, it will hurt your brain. Okay, it doesn't make sense. It's literally like right, and you're like, wait, what? Say that again, right? There's a video there's a video that went viral a few years ago of a weatherman who got it right. He said like one of the Welsh names, and it's literally like a million syllable name, and it was that correct that it went viral because they were like, you're not supposed to be able to speak Welsh,
like the language of the trees.
It literally, the man may as well have spoken wood to you, you know, and just be like, how did he do that? I don't know. But this is the point, because when you look at a word that has multiple E's and D's and W's and G's in places that shouldn't be there, right, you think, well, that's bollocks. But the reason is because that language wasn't made for the Latin alphabet, the English alphabet. It wasn't made for our alphabet. It was made for a different alphabet. So that's the issue, is that they've taken a language from a different alphabet, the Colburn alphabet, and they've Latinized it. They've given the Latin alphabet, and now you've ended up with this jumble, which literally looks like somebody smashed their face into a keyboard and gone, name it that.
So if you're are you saying that the Latinization of Welsh is evidence that someone's covering something up?
Oh well, yeah, because in by Latinizing it, you're essentially destroying it as it is.
So what's the source of the Latin language? That's the Frankish Germanic tribes who basically created the Holy Roman Empire and eventually led to a lot of the stuff. And their coat of arms can be found all over the world. It's that double-headed eagle or phoenix. Some people call it the
if
phoenix.
You go look at the articles when we finally get onto them, the one that had the treaty between Russia and China, I think it was, but it was to do with Tartarian. It listed the Tartarian language on that stone that had Latin written there. So they obviously, you know what I mean? They got Latin there. That was important to them. And you'll also find with the Tartarian language itself, we saw that it had 202 characters originally, right? Like the Ethiopian. But when it's been changed to Tartarian today, as we see in Tatarstan, spoken by people in like Kazan, for example, the one that the Russians are still trying to eradicate, that only has like I think it's the same characters as the English alphabet, if not a couple more. But it's the Latin version of Tartarian, but it's essentially got the same letters.
The interesting thing about that Tartarian language too is that it's people in like if you go to Turkey and you can speak the Tartar language, the current one, you can understand the Turkey perfectly. I have a video.
I think the point I'm trying to say though is, how does a language of 202 characters translate to a 20 something character language without losing something?
Losing 80% or 90%.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what's happened with the Welsh. This exact same thing has happened with the Welsh language, because we don't know how many characters they've lost access to that would make their suddenly make sense. Okay, I get it now. But before, it didn't make sense, because it's like translating a name into numbers. It's like me giving you the
I will be right back.
It's literally like me giving you the binary code for my name and then expecting you to pronounce my name correctly. You know what I mean? You're going 101010110, and I'm like, no, it's Luke, you dumbass. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what it is.
They have like official committees that regulate language and stuff, so it makes sense that if there is someone controlling society, that they would want to bastardize all the languages. But
exactly.
I'm just confused, I guess. What I'm confused about is was there a worldwide civilization speaking the same language? Is there any languages left over that could prove that, or are you saying that?
Well, I mean,
what exactly are you saying?
I mean, that's so much conjecture, isn't it?
It's the Tower of Babel language, right? And like, was there one overall pictographic?
Well, I mean,
language?
Hear me out. Hypothetically, you wouldn't necessarily need like a global language in the sense that, like, let's say there was a global cataclysm and only one people survived, then technically that would almost be the global language.
Hey, no one's saying it's.
What the fuck just happened?
What happened to your voice, man?
I think Bernie's been abducted, and all that's left over is this. All right.
That's what happens when the homunculus speak.
420 hit different time.
One of these creatures has got loose. You just see the fucking glass crack on Bert.
I brought up some of those articles, by the way.
Right, sweet, yeah, but I think it's very difficult to say because, like, you know, I'd love to say there was a worldwide thing that had a similar language. One thing I will say though is that maybe it wasn't worldwide, but Colburn. So Colburn itself is this Welsh Cymric language, and we found it. It's Etruscan. It's found in Assyria. It's found able to decode Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it's also found because of Maddock with the Native Americans. So as far as a ancient global language goes, Colburn is the one that keeps turning up everywhere. And if you look into it, they'll tell you that it's a fake language that was forged in the 1800s. So even though there's stones from like 800 with it on, they're like,
what language does it remind you of? Is it like a Latinized language, or is it something more hieroglyphic?
No, it's literally runic. It's runic, very similar to Iberian, which Old Iberian, which makes sense because supposedly Brutus sent some people to Spain before he went to England, and that was his people, so they could have spread the language there as well. If you want to see it, you can literally look up like the Colburn Bardic alphabet, and I'm not sure if I've got any pictures in there, but you know what? I've got it in one of my books here. Give me a sec. I will show you a small picture.
I just looked it up too. Yeah, looks Nordic. See if I can pull up an image here.
Who what now? You're trying to find an image.
Maybe.
You don't need me to switch the screen.
Is it on
there?
Your screen, yeah.
Right. Hello. Right. You've got it. Yeah, you've actually found
Tweaking
it. But if you quickly just allow my camera,
my computer just is like freaking out for some reason.
So this is the script, and yeah, so obviously I think it's reversed, which no, it's not. It's cool, but yeah. So that's the script. That's what it looks like. So it's very interesting. Carry on.
That's like exactly what's on this website.
By the way,
this runic stuff is fascinating. It's found on like so many of those tablets.
You'll notice something. In fact, should we have some fun? What do you notice about this alphabet? If you were to make one comment on what it looks like, etc., what's something that you would say?
It looks like it's borderline getting to being Latinized. I don't know why the computer keeps scrolling down so far.
It's notice there is no curves, right? It's non-cursive. Why would a language be non-cursive? Because you're engraving it in hard materials, which you can't curve, because you're engraving it. So that is why you'd end up with these letters like this, because everything had to be sharp. And this also helped them because they used to write messages on sticks, which is actually something that got passed over to the Native Americans. But you could write these messages on sticks, write them down, get a stick and carve them all the way down the stick. And then you could send a bundle of sticks across the country with your guy and a horse, and he'd give the bundle of sticks over, and that's your message. And the people would read the sticks. And that was their first mail service using sticks and this language. Now, how amazing is that? Well, maybe you're not as nerdy as me, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's just, I don't know, like, the runic languages don't make much sense to me. I don't really know much about them.
Yes, cuneiform. Very
it's weird
close.
how
yeah.
It's weird how they don't have the Zeeg symbol either, like the S lightning bolt looking thing. This looks like a fasces a little bit, and you said bundle of sticks. That's why I was circling it.
But yeah, I just find all that kind of these connections very interesting. And Colburn he's been eradicated purposely. The people in charge have hidden it. Now, it's up to you, you know, what that reason is. Alan Wilson believes it's because a mixture of political and religious reasoning, basically not wanting to admit that Britain had its own people that, you know, got taken over. Some people believe it's much bigger than that it was all to do with Tartaria and they were part of, like, you know, a global empire and there was stuff in there. Or it might be to do with Christianity forming in Britain first. We don't know. There are so many different theories, but what we do know, and that's what we focus on, is that Colburn is being purposely hidden. It's being purposely attacked. You know, if you Google what Colburn is, it will tell you it is a language forged in the 1800s by a Welsh bloke. You know, faked by this Welsh dude. Once again, trying to tarnish the Welsh. You know, look at them; they just have no history, so they're making up languages, right? And it is really bad because at the very minimum, my entire country's had its history taken away and hidden, and you know that's something to care about on its own. But then at the most, you know, it goes bigger. It's global. Maybe Colburn was bigger than we think. Maybe we're all wrong about Tartarians, and it was actually the Welsh that controlled most of the world, and we've killed the Welsh. Who knows? Like, I mean, I think the whole AppAmerica Myrig thing definitely has a connection. As people brought up in the old days before Columbus, it would have been a big point of contextual pride to say we've got the official landing. So if you're Spanish or Dutch or French and you're fighting over America, if you find evidence that you were actually, you know, your people landed here 500 years ago, 600 years ago, that almost gives you legitimacy because you were the first one to find it. So loads of countries were always ready to be like, actually, I think you'll find we found it first. So it's really strange that the British didn't jump on this Maddox thing and instead went, no, it was Columbus. Because you'd think the British should be like, whoa, no, sir. We were here first. You know, we have a lot of flags for a reason. This is ours.
It is, you know? It is sketchy how a company or a country like America, founded by the English, pays so much homage to Christopher Columbus, who was allegedly a Spanish.
Well, this is the funny thing, right? Columbus, right? You know, when he got to America, when he got here, he used maps. As in, he used maps provided to him. He knew where he was going, and he was given maps by people that had already been. So how is he the first one there? He's like, you can look at his maps. And if you talk to, or go back to the history books, the people that with Columbus, they spoke about arriving in America and meeting Africans there. Like, turning up and being like, hey, you guys, no way.
And then they try to dispute that by saying African just means Western.
Well,
but yeah, I mean,
exactly.
That's the thing that's weird about all this, though, is because you're saying that they say that Christopher Columbus is the first one there. That's the only people that say that are like the education systems we currently have in the movies that we watch and stuff like that. I mean, because there's books on it's literally in books and mainstream history as well that he's not the first one to be there. So,
well, in fact, I would go as far back to say that at the moment, there's a book I've been reading called the OdySee. It's all about the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. And it's actually, it goes into proving how it was actually an Egyptian person who did this, circumnavigated the globe. We think around 600 BC-ish, maybe 500. It was around the Trojan War time.
My buddy Elkman sent me a book the other day that said like the monks in Afghanistan, like the Buddhist civilization they had, made voyages to America. I haven't read the book
Well, I mean,
yet, but
you know what? I'll send you this one that I'm talking about because it's a very short book, and but it's very convincing. It talks a lot as well about the real Troy. It goes into Egypt and how so when you hear of like Agamemnon and stuff like that, they weren't the
Agamemnon,
Greeks.
king of Mycenae.
Well, this is the thing, right? He was Egyptian. He was Egyptian, and not only that, he was ginger. I'm not kidding you. He was ginger.
Dude,
And
a lot of these guys, a lot of them are ginger. That's Genghis Khan.
A lot,
Kublai Khan.
Agamemnon, he was
Mongols.
actually Ramesses II, I think it was. It's basically these people are the same people. And it was what really happened with Helen of Troy, okay, was she was, can't remember her Egyptian name, but she was the wife of Tutankhamun, who died, right? And now the way that Egyptian system works is if you were if you married the pharaoh and then he died, you were the all-powerful one. No, you were the all-powerful one. So if somebody married her, they became the new pharaoh of Egypt. They essentially became a god, right? By marrying her. So the minute Tutankhamun died, every single dude in the land was like, right? And Agamemnon started wooing her, and he literally went in and he wooed Helen. And guess what? This Greek guy from Troy, he woos her and convinces her to come back with him all the way to Troy. So he goes back to Troy with this Helen, and the Egyptians, they're like, fuck this. Agamemnon's like, I'm gonna go get my get this wife back because I need to marry her to become pharaoh. And he jumps on the boats and sails to Troy, where they have the war. He finally gets Helen back, and he takes her back to Egypt, and he marries her.
So what do you think? What do you think the reasoning for them covering up Troy's existence or pretending like they discovered it in the 1980s, even though it was on older maps?
And the same with Pompeii and South Antarctica and
well, again, this links up actually. So Geoffrey of Monmouth, he was a dude that was writing in like 1100 AD. He wrote all about King Arthur, stuff like that. But one main point that he talked about was Troy. And in the 1800s, they turned around and went, well, we know Troy isn't a real place. So this guy was clearly off his rocker. Let's throw out everything he said. And then obviously they found Troy. So they didn't go and, they didn't go to the bin and get it all out like, sorry, Joffrey, and put it back. They just left it in the bin. Or as Alan Wilson says, they threw the baby out with the bathwater because, they wanted to get rid of this stuff, but then obviously it got proved. And the reason is because Troy, we think the reason is because Troy was the starting point of a second invasion of Britain or migration, where the losers of Troy, the people that had all got their stuff together, which included the Cymry, which were the tribes of Israel, so the remaining tribes of Israel that had been living at Troy with the Greeks, they all jumped on boats at Lemnos and decided we're going to go to the kingdom of Albine, which was named after this Assyrian woman, and they all sailed over there then, and they took over, and that's Brutus who took over. And this is interesting actually, because you must have heard me talk before, possibly, about when Brutus arrived. He supposedly slayed the last giant in Britain, and he talked about there being giants. And they say in those days there were giants in Britain. Now this, unfortunately to say, is a mistranslation, because the Syrians or old Assyrians are called Giantus, right? And they
were giants too.
Yeah, well, they migrated to Britain in 1600 BC. So what they said was there were Giantus in Britain in those days. They mean old Syrians. So there were Syrian people in Britain in old days, and Brutus threw the Assyrian dude, threw them down the hill, and he was like, this is mine now. And that's how it works. So, and that makes sense because you look, and there's a county in Britain called Surrey, which is Syria. So
interesting.
Yes, there is.
Even the Tartar Empire and the Mongolian Empire, whatever you want to call it, they have a connection to Syria as well. So that's interesting. And the king was actually called Argon.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense because there is a place called Argon in it is near China, just north of China, around the Manchuria regions, off the Amur River. There's a place called Argon. And supposedly that's where some of the tribes of Israel went and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all connected. In fact, well, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kimmeroi, right? Because when you look at who the Cymry are, the Kimmeroi, as the Greeks called them. They were described as being unstoppable hordes. It also means traveling people, caravan people, people that move about. It sounds a lot like the Tartars. The Tartars claim to be descendants of the tribes of Israel. I'm wondering if they are the same people. I'm wondering if the Tartarians are the tribes of Israel. They would have probably spoken a yeah, and they've all moved out in different directions. And maybe the Welsh were the tribes of Israel in Britain. Maybe they were those ones there.
Exactly. The original, for sure.
Well, yeah,
After,
that's. I mean,
the original Atlantis, Noah's flood, or whatever.
That's where the whole like. Are these people like? Are the symbols that we find throughout history that are the same throughout history? Is this a representation of these people, or are they planted? Because you have. Like with the fleur-de-lis, for example, the earliest example you have of the fleur-de-lis is from like the Scythians, and then that civilization is like in like
the Tartars.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, just someone in the comments. Sorry, they said, Luke, check it out when you can. Diverse letters, Tartarian script, and others from 1575. Diversity of letters, Samuel Purchas. That isn't Purchase Your Pilgrims, is it? Because if it is Purchase Your Pilgrims, which I presume the fact that it says Purchase, it might be related. If it is, then I've got that book. But it's part of something called the Hacklitus Posthumus or something like that. It's a collection of works by this guy Richard Hakluyt that included Purchase Your Pilgrims by, I think, that dude. But yeah, anyway, sorry, bit of a diversion there. I like to engage the audience every now and then, let them know they're still wanted.
It's all good. Yeah, I can't see them for some reason. Like when I stream on other people's channel, I don't know.
When you're on StreamYard, do you not see comments on the right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it just shows you your channels.
There we go.
Comments, right?
I'm an idiot.
Well, that's weird. It should freaking.
Oh, he's got it. He's figured it out.
No, sometimes I have it pulled up on my TV, but I don't today. So I can usually see comments on the TV.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no, but it's strange that you're restreaming it and it's not putting your comments.
Purchases Pilgrims. Oh, no way. Sick. The 20 volume set. Wow. I didn't know it was that long. I just have the Tartaria stuff, I think. But yeah, very cool. Anyway, shall we get on to the articles that you always talk about, or do you want to talk about Old Turkic first?
No, I mean the only connection between the Turkic thing is just that the Franks invaded Constantinople and took over, and basically the courts of the Ottoman Empire up to World War I were speaking French. It was like seen as noble to speak.
Seems that you've mentioned Constantinople just because, very interesting. We're going to go back to Wales. That's why we hate and love the Welsh, because they keep coming up everywhere. But the story of the Holy Cross, have you ever heard of it? So Helen, or Empress Helen of Britain, okay, who is the Empress of Rome. She was the wife of Magnus Maximus, who is actually a British Roman emperor, sorry. And she supposedly went over to Constantinople, and she claimed the cross that Jesus had been buried on. Or she, in fact, went down to Jerusalem, and they apparently tortured some people, got the cross, took it back to Constantinople, sailed it back to Britain, and she walked it around Wales on a wagon set, showing it off to all these people. And then she buried it in a cave, and people would go and pray to the cross of Jesus and stuff like that. Well, eventually it says that it was, when it comes to where it went, it says that it was laid to rest again in Constantinople, which makes it sound like Constantinople as in the Constantinople. Well, it turns out there's actually a hamlet, which is just a small, tiny few set of houses, just a hamlet in Wales called Constantinople, right where the cross was supposedly buried. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, as well, is the Welsh, they were very notorious for hiding stuff from the British. So, for example, I think it was Edward I. He came down to the Welsh and demanded that they hand over the cross of Jesus and the crown of King Arthur. He wanted the crown of King Arthur, and they were like, no, we don't know where it is. Sorry, don't have a clue. But they do. They hide these things because the British are always turning up trying to take them, and obviously the British are also trying to wipe out their language all the time. So what they ended up doing was kind of hiding all this stuff, changing the names and keeping it all secret. And if a British person turned up, they'd just be like, shut, and wouldn't speak because they knew what was happening. So these stories might be a way of explaining all of this stuff away, and the fact that obviously it might be in Wales. So it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Why does everything keep appearing everywhere? Why is there a Constantinople in Wales and a Constantinople?
What do you mean when you say it might be in Wales? What do you mean by it?
It is in the cross that Jesus was buried on.
Interesting. There's historical accounts that are for some reason covered up too of other cultures where they say the tomb of Jesus is.
Well, I have a book here. I keep grabbing books, but it's literally called Where Jesus is Buried. And yeah, it claims pretty out there. His claim of what had happened with Jesus is basically that the crucifixion was kind of faked. So it turns out that Jesus was actually really rich. He wasn't like a poor dude or anything. He was actually like quite a wealthy guy. And basically the idea is that he might have paid off the person who did the crucifixion.
This is blasphemy.
If you look at the crucifixion, right? Look how long it usually takes someone to die from crucifixion. Jesus, he just gritted his teeth and pushed through in like 9 hours. He was like, oh, this is so boring. Oh, right. Other people are there for like a week, and everyone's there like, right? And they're like,
Luke, come on, man.
I'm just saying.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it, right? Someone even stabbed him with a spear. Like, he can't be dead yet. Right? No, look at that, pretty dead. Right. So I'm just saying, it does sound like they've paid the guards and been like, look, we're gonna do this to make it look like he's dead, so that we can flee with the Holy Family to Wales.
So that it wasn't his last supper.
Well, it was basically it was all a trick to get Jesus out there. I mean, imagine if it was actually like, Jesus sits
and
down.
That's why he resurrected 3 days later and went off to Wales and then probably the Americas. And before that, there's the stories of Jesus going to
there's a place in Japan
India,
they say
into Asia, and what would have been Tartaria the last years.
There's a
I think the original said that
he
he had 70 odd fucking disciples, and he sent them all off in different directions. Like, it wasn't just 12. This guy had loads, and he would literally say to them, he'd say, you go off and spread my story. Tell my story, my exact story. Tell it to everyone you can, okay? So when these people turned up in places, they'd go around and they'd be like, hey, mate, have you heard about Jesus? And they'd be like, no, piss off, leave me alone, right? And he'd go over to the next person, be like, have you heard the story of Jesus? He'd be like, fuck off, what the fuck, where did you come from, right? And after a while, people would be there having a drink, and he'd be like, have you met that Jesus guy? And they'd be like, no, who's that? The guy keeps going around telling them about Jesus. And then that, right, over time, he would have become known as Jesus. Because they would have been like,
Luke, you are cute. My mom is texting me asking, does Ancient Historia have a channel too?
Right. Well,
Like
and on that bombshell. Anyway, yeah, I just lost my train of thought. Fuck it. Never mind.
Is it Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus of Tartaria?
Well,
exactly.
In fact, there's a Bethlehem in Wales as well.
And did Jesus escape his death, like you say, Luke, and could have gone to America for going through Wales and the Mormon story, possibly? Who knows?
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, you know what? Interestingly, the Mormon story, I never used to really believe it until I found out that the Welsh people were engraving these stories on like tablets, and I was like, oh shit, imagine if he's just like wandered into an old ancient Welsh thing and found this thing and be like, oh no way, it's a message from God. But how crazy is this actually? This is in this book again, this King Arthur conspiracy, which there's not many copies of this left. So if you can get hold of one, go and do it, because I just honestly, when they're gone, they'll be gone probably forever. But it goes deep into all this stuff, and it's super interesting. I'll see if I can find it. If you guys carry on, I'll see if we can find this thing.
All right.
I don't know. I think the Jesus stuff was kind of out of left field for me. I'm thinking all kinds of crazy shit now. What's up?
It's
up,
basically
Ryan?
it's about
It's like that was the equivalent of the FBI.gov file that says Hitler went to Argentina. Like, what?
Well, I'm trying to find it. It's because basically
No
it was
okay. So
in the 1800s.
top...
There was supposed to be an ancient Bible that was it was kept hidden with this Native American woman in her cabin, right? And apparently Thomas Jefferson wanted to get his hands on it, and then suddenly the cabin burnt down and the Bible went with it. And this thing is supposed to be like an ancient Welsh Bible, and it's like an original Christian Bible, and it makes sense why they want to destroy it, because if you like look at David Hume Jr.'s work, he will say that the New Testament and everything to do with that is the con, it's the new bit. We've changed the Bible to twist it to make it do our work, not yours. And in that circumstance, the true old Bibles, they need to get rid of them, don't they? Because that will have the real stories in it. They'll have the originals. So it would make sense why they would go out their way to destroy all these different Bibles that might contain the original Christianity. Because you might be reading through it and just like page 1, like, wait, Jesus was a girl? And they're like, fuck. You know?
Frick, we need Zerdus so we can go into Harry Mary the Sasquatch saint.
Yeah,
we're going down that rabbit hole because
Mary,
it's Easter,
I did Harry Mary. What are you talking? I talked about Harry
Easter.
Mary.
We're talking about the resurrection, Illuminati confirmed conspiracy of Jesus. Avoiding the death and what would have been crucified. Were you like? Are you saying that it would have been someone else up there, or like? Just
actually,
let's not get into that blasphemous talk.
Yeah, some people think that it was like genuinely like taking a drug that would fucking knock you out and make you appear like you were dead, like proper standard teen drama style. I need to run away from home, or Romeo and Juliet. I think they suggest it was that kind of level of he takes it, his heart rate slows to 0.
Juliet. Romeo and Jesus
Romeo and Jesus. Jesus was gay? Put that Bible down.
What the fuck, Luke? Like, now I'm gonna get my house burnt down, you asshole.
Hey, these are all hypothetical things that might have been found in the ancient Bible that was burnt. You don't know.
Shem does not agree with what he's saying.
No, I don't care. Freedom of speech. But
just page 1. Jesus preferred to be referred to as they. Like, oh wow.
What do you think? What do you think about the Jesuits, Luke?
Fuck them.
They murdered everybody and wiped out how many languages, including all of the Aztecs, Mayans, and everything in America.
So are they potentially one of the evil forces, or were they?
I definitely think the Jesuits is to do with it. Yeah.
Probably one of the most.
Because look at the 1600s. Like, honestly, find any book that we read, and it'll start with like, oh, thankfully a Jesuit was in the area, and you're like, oh no. Right, straight away, it's everything. It's like, oh, don't worry, a Jesuit, he walked through China. And it's always like two Jesuits and an ox walked through China. Here's China's history. Job done, don't ask any questions. Cheers, chaps. Like, it's nonsense.
Just 2 Jesuits and a mule went all through there and somehow controlled it all. And
for real, no, literally. And then
overthrew every king, probably.
And then you just get this standard history plus X theory of writing a history book, which is like, let's say I want to write a history book. I know nothing about Sweden, right? Let's say I want to write a book about Sweden. I literally go to my local library, or in these days, just go on Google, and I download the 5 most recent history books about Sweden, and I read all 5 of those books, and then I write my own book quoting all 5 of those books, and people will pat me on the back and go, you know a lot about Sweden, right? And I know fuck all about Sweden. And this is the funny thing, right? If I copy 1 book, you'll get done for plagiarism. If I copy 2 books, that's research. If I copy 5 books, that's in-depth research.
You can write 4 billion books.
Luke, do you
But this
remember
is
which
how
part
history
of,
gets fucked with it. Oh, Mazeppa, yes, Mazeppa the horseman.
where can we find the information on Discord? Because I saw that you brought that up yesterday, or
For
whenever that
Mazeppa,
stream was. Yeah, which tab was that under? Do you remember?
it's Tartarian images where all the articles are, and I think if you
Sorry, I'm
type
just
in
gonna run to the
Mazeppa,
bathroom. I'll be back in.
if you type in Mazeppa on the search of the Discord, it should come up. But if it doesn't, you'll have to scroll. But
All right, I'll try it.
I think it had 2 Z's. I'm not 100%. I find it, but I'm rolling a spliff, so you'll have to wait. Priorities.
Well, you notice this guy's from Ukraine, or maybe even the Crimea area.
Oh yeah, because the Crimean was a big part of the empire. They had their own emperors. But again, right, this is something which can be confusing because we don't know for sure. But if it's anything like the Roman Empire, then it's exactly like I was talking about before, where you can have a British emperor of the Roman Empire who lives in Britain, and that's where he considers himself living. Yet we look back and say he was a Roman emperor, yet he was a British dude in Britain who...
Tartaria is now the Eastern Holy Roman Empire under like the Orthodox Christian Church and like the Cossack Islam, and then you have the Western Holy Roman Catholic Jesuit order that is now NATO and attacking them once again and fighting over the hot flashpoint being Little Tartaria, Crimea, right there, right at the heart of it all.
That's an interesting point. I never thought about that before, but there are multiple times throughout history where there's sketchy situations involving the reunification of the Roman Empire. Like, I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but there's multiple times in history where there was a king on the western side and a queen on the eastern side, and they were going to get married and reunite the Roman Empire, but it didn't happen. So I don't know if that means it was infiltrated and corrupted, or if that's just natural history or what. But it's interesting usually based on what you said.
Right? Just, oh, we're gonna marry you in. Oh no, they all got murdered instead.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, I think Crimean Tartary in particular, what I was getting at with that emperor thing is like, so for example, in these articles we see one reference at least of the emperor of Crim Tartary. Now it is a satirical reference, so it could be referencing something that isn't about anymore, you know what I mean, like as in the Crimean Empire might have subsided 100 years before, but it was still funny to say at the time.
That article is from the 1800s though, right?
Yeah.
Where is it at? Is it in the Tartarian images?
Yeah, it's where all of them are.
Because the Russian Revolution didn't take place. It could have been before the Russian Revolution, because remember in the Russian Revolution they suppressed all of the historical Tartarian tribes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So say, for example, this Tartarian emperor was still in Crimea at that time during the Russian Revolution. He would have helped the communists initially, and then he would have eventually been eradicated.
Well, we can go into these articles and you can start to build a narrative from it yourself. Like I say, I've included all the links, so if you want to see the whole article, you click that link. I've taken a small screenshot of like the relevant info because honestly, most of the link is just a giant newspaper with fuck all on it. But we can go from the top.
Go from the top. Wow. Coat of arms before corruption.
Yeah, I like how he has the owl as well. Oddy's picture of the top quarter, because we don't see much of the owl. We see the griffin all the time. We barely see the owl. But yeah,
a lot.
So obviously, those there are the two references to the world's alphabets. The one above and below the one we're looking at. The one below is just a better quality version of the one above. The one above.
Tweaking.
Okay. But yeah, this one is the one that references the treaty or whatever it was that was set in stone. All its articles shall be engraven in the Tartarian, Chinese, Russian, and Latin language upon stone, which will be placed at the bounds settled between the two empires. I presume that means Chinese and Russian empires, not Tartarian. But it is open to debate.
They mentioned the Manchus as well here.
Yeah, it's basically, I think it's talking about when Russia and China have moved into those areas and met in the middle and gone, right, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Russians have expanded from, because you got to remember as well, right? The Russians were originally the Muscovites. So they've moved, I think what's happened is they've moved east, right? So they've captured like around Little Tartary, but there's still been battles around there. And they've moved east, capturing towards Siberia. And then when they've got to the far east, they've moved south into Chinese Tartary, the Manchuria areas, and China's moved up and they've met in the middle. And then after that, they've gone back to independent Tartary, which is between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And they've gone there and they've done that bed in. And that's what these articles will talk about, is them taking over independent Tartary and stuff. And then obviously the Mughals were taken over by the British. So the British were coming from the south. They took over the Mughals. And in fact, there's an article that talks about in this, the British basically making an agreement with the Russians that they're fine with you taking independent Tartary as long as you let us keep Afghanistan and you don't carry on attacking. There are a few articles that talk about the British being very nervous about the Russians because the army was so big. If they carried on and attacked Afghanistan and the Mughals, then, Britain would be fucked. So
it's interesting because when you look at the history of the Tartary Empire, the Mongolians or the Yuan dynasty, it says that it pretty much never conquered India. But here it says that this guy is from Tartary, Tamerlane.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tamerlane's history, I think both of them, because there's different histories with Tamerlane. I mean, Anatoly Fomenko will actually tell you that Tamerlane himself is a fake person, that is a mixture of two real people that just got thrown together from around the same period. And there's a lot of evidence to back that up. But there are two stories with Tamerlane, very conflicting. One in which he has like a general called Axala that's part of his team. In this one, he joins up with a Greek empire and ends up taking over Egypt and stuff like that. But in the other one, it's a lot more low key, and it includes a lot more details about the tribe he was fighting, like the Jeets coming from the east and stuff like that, with Amir Kurgan, people like that coming from the Gobi Desert. It's all very centralized, but he still takes over India and most of like Persia, stuff like that. In that, so whatever way you look at it, the Tartarians at some point conquered the Mughals.
Well, the story with Marco Polo. Marco Polo was a Venetian explorer who seemed like he was more like a merchant who wanted to just take track. Everything he mentioned in his book is basically related to trading. Like he doesn't really talk about anything besides.
Just interesting there, because we just seen, I don't know if it was in one of the ones we just seen, but the Venetians were mentioned.
Yeah, I noticed that when that's literally when I messaged BurnEye earlier and I said there's something I wanted to add to what you're saying. It was literally at that exact part.
Because that's interesting. The Marco Polo's a Venetian, and the Venetians are connected to this battle.
Well, another interesting thing about the Venetians is they were like, at least as far as historical records they're one of the first people to start doing this whole company system, right? So basically, every territory on the earth right now is almost divided into these different companies. Like everyone knows about the Dutch East India Company and the West India Company and stuff like that. But basically, even the states of the United States were founded off these companies. Like there used to be like the Ohio Company.
Maritime law, right? The sea people, the Phoenicians, and all of that. That's very good points you're bringing up right now.
Well, it just seems like there's a group of people who have monetized the entire planet, and they've been working on this monetization since, at least
from the beginning. The city of London, the Vatican.
Honestly, this goes back so many years. Again, to bring back the Welsh, right? This is an example of how they have used our systems to make us poorer. So the original Welsh system of inheritance is something called gavelkind or gavelkind, which is when somebody died, their possessions, usually their land, was divided equally among all their male heirs. It's still male, according to this.
That tradition, while you're talking about that tradition carries over to the Mongolians, and it's also from in history, it has French origins in history ever since Clovis the First, I believe, and he was like the foundation of modern
when
France.
was that?
I want to say, I don't know off the top of my head, but damn, yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll just look it up
Can
real
you
quick.
guess century-wise?
No,
I don't know. Right,
I'll
okay.
just look it up real quick.
All right, okay. Well, so you've got to remember as well, by the way, Britain owned France, Gaul, as it was known. Britain owned France for quite a while.
Century.
That's why a place called Brittany in France is obviously Brittany, because we owned it for so long, and that was all part of this. So the connections there are very similar. But going back to what I was saying, right? So the Gavelkind, that division of land equally among your heirs, that results obviously in more of an even distribution of your wealth. Well, what happens in is it protogenence or something like that? I can't remember off the top of my head. Primogenence. It's the method of giving all your wealth to your oldest male heir. Now, what happens is if you're a rich person and your oldest son gets all your stuff, it just keeps putting all the wealth into one person who then is controllable. You know, you can marry into that. You can take their wealth. You can, kill them, take your wealth. And instead of dividing it up, you end up with, say, there's a rich person with 10 kids. One of those kids becomes rich and the other 9 are basically peasants. Right?
And then the family divides and conquers and hates each other too, right? Like the jealousy and all of that.
Well, it fuels the narcissism.
Community.
Definitely. It breaks apart community. It makes everything about money because people are always thinking like, my older brother is going to get everything and I'm going to be bollocks, and it does. Instead of creating this system of like, we're all in it together, everything that we create as a family gets shared amongst us. It's not like that. It's all you versus me. And that means the people above us are laughing. And this just shows that this is the way that it goes all the way back to, the old days. They don't want these systems penetrating this capitalist, narcissistic work society. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it because, your viewers will think I'm a complete lefty. Which
the corporate aspect, right? Like those rich elite, and that, they divide us. It goes to like the system you're just describing. And then where does their money go? Into these either wealth funds for humanity, supposedly, that are tax-free, but really it's like these non-inheritance that their families then control, and that it's like all of these trillions of dollars.
I think when it gets to the point, like, BlackRock, for example, I always talk about this. Nobody ever seems to really care.
It's called a BlackRock, hey? Illuminati.
But like, when you think about BlackRock, okay, so we invade a country like Iraq or Afghanistan, and we pay a private company to go and do the security in that place. Now, how nuts is that?
Well, BlackRock actually is the asset managers. I think you're thinking of academia, and before that it was called...
Well, BlackRock definitely have their private army, don't they? I'm pretty certain that the BlackRock...
BlackRock
they do.
has private.
Yeah, that's the one that they got done for so many war crimes, but because they're private, they're not even... Because they basically, they can shoot people, and they don't really have anyone to answer to. They're all ex-military people that as soon as they leave the military,
you're thinking Blackwater. Blackwater.
Is that? Are you sure? Blackwater, is that it? Not BlackRock. Maybe they're connected. Sorry, then. That is my bad. Blackwater. Thank you.
And BlackRock is the largest asset manager now.
Right. Okay. Great. Sorry, that's my bad. But yeah. Well, the example.
They probably hire academia, aka Blackwater, for keeping them alive, because they own and control everything. And that is really the problem.
I think the point is though, is that the point is even in circumstances like that, right? So look at it like this, right? We've got all your tax money, your trillions in tax money, right? And there's a private company over there, and we go, here you go, have your billions, just fucking take it, you go deal with it, right? And that's where the systemic issue lies, is this privatization of everything. Because, if you look at it like building houses, okay? So in a system where we think, okay, we need to build some houses because there's just, there's not enough housing, right? So all the house prices are going up. With that, the rent prices are going up, which means the average everyday person that can't afford a house is struggling, right? So we've got to sort this out. How do we deal with it? Well, these people, they will hire a private company, give them millions to build houses, and then they'll sell those houses onto the market, making even more money. And then they'll go, we built houses. But they didn't build any houses. They gave money to rich people who built houses. And then the rich people sold the houses to other rich people who then rented the houses. And it's just
which is
fucked.
BlackRock,
Like,
which is an asset manager that of property.
yeah, exactly. It's
real
just
estate
right.
is their major business. Like that's how they
we're in a society where we're narcissistic. Basically, we're taught to hate each other. We're taught to look.
We're
at each
not.
other.
The controllers are. They're the dividing.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, we are
That
taught
Bill
it,
Hicks,
whether we
I love the
accept
Bill
it or not.
Hicks skit where it's like he's like, all right, the
BRB.
controllers like pick up the gun, and then as soon as we pick up the gun and use it on ourselves, well, then they're able to shoot a missile at us, or we're shooting missiles at ourselves. It's like we have to stop killing each other and stop believing in this false scarcity, and instead doing exactly what we are doing here, working on building and free energy, this electroculture and agriculture. I'm really looking forward to that series.
Well, so you know what? One example of how they do this shit. So I was talking about this last night with you. So with the Library of Congress articles that we've been looking at, thankfully they're free. They've been uploaded. You can go on. You can search for a term. You can view it. Right? The British, they did the same thing. But what did they do? They gave the rights to a private company to go around all over the country to every library and scan every single newspaper that they had. And then they put them all online. But if you want to view it, you can search it. So you can go on now, search anything you want, and it'll give you all the results. And when you click it, it'll say, you can't view this until you sign up. And you got to pay like £10 a month just to view these articles. Like, how fucked is that? That's our history.
Right?
Those are our articles. And they will charge you. But you'll get it for free if you work for a university, right? Because of course. But if you're just an everyday person, just one of the poors that just wants to view an artitle, you need to subscribe. And it literally is. It's a standard system of like, well, you could pay £10 a month, or you could give us 100 now, and it'll be £20 off. And you're just like, or hear me out, just show me the fucking articles, you snakes. Like, honestly, absolute leeches.
All right. Since we are live, I just realized on all three of my Facebook accounts and my Twitter and my Twitch and both of my YouTubes. Let's get back to the history of Tartaria and Shem. You got quite the empire up there. Is that the Mongol Empire, or is that what's being labeled here? Is this the Persian?
Or this is just the mainstream account for what the Mongolian Empire is. Keep in mind, the Mongolian Empire is also the Tartar Empire and the Yuan dynasty of China. All three the same thing. So the reason I brought this up was because Luke mentioned the conquest of the Mughals, which were down in India. If you see on this map, the only part of India that's conquered here is the northern part. So this must have happened after the death of Kublai Khan, which lines up to the whole story that he was saying about Tamerlane, because Tamerlane is in the 14th century, I believe. But so what I was saying before about Marco Polo, it seemed like he was just going around to these different areas within the Mongolian Empire and then parts of India and other parts of South Asia, just writing down basically what was there that could be used for trading. Right? So shortly after he returns from his journey, that's when all this stuff starts going down in the East, where all these companies start showing up and having these trade routes and everything like that.
Right, like the East
because
India
you have
Corporation.
Yeah, exactly. So you have examples of this civilization documented as being very, very, very advanced, maybe even influencing Western society more than we could even imagine, because they had paper money, everyone paid taxes, they knew a lot about astrology. Like when a child was born, they would literally write down the exact time and date, and it had a huge role in their life. Basically, they knew all of this stuff. For some reason, they cover it up and make them seem like they're barbarians. Right.
So one point I want to add into this, and it's like I've also suspected potentially the Persian, but also more the what's it called, the Turkish before or after the Persian, the Ottoman Empire, and that the Ottoman Empire was also potentially the Tartarian Empire, because the Tartars, like modern day Tartars, a lot of them are referred to as this Turkish Islamic Arabic people, and then that it encompassed a lot of the same Mediterranean and like seaport areas, and then this sort of land area going back into it. And could they have potentially all just been these different eras of this Tartarian realm and timeline?
It fits into the same area and has the same ancestors, but I don't know, the Ottomans were doing some pretty weird stuff, and there's also that connection between the Ottomans speaking French at a certain point in time. So I don't know.
Right. So like I'm just saying, like history, like our narrative renaming part of what's being discovered and be covering up this Tartarian as, oh, it was this, and then the most recent Ottomans like that were in World War I, World War II, and everything changed, that big reset. It's like that was obviously the installation of the controllers and the modern lie structure that who knows who the originals actually were, right?
Well, the Ottomans also consider themselves to be Romans. They consider themselves to be the Roman Empire, the new Roman Empire. So there's also that connection too, which is really weird. So
yeah,
I don't know who's the one that's hiding
the Empire essentially again too, is they would have been the East. They're back and forth between the West Roman Empire and the East Roman Empire, and could it be like that Tartarian versus this dystopian elite today? And sorry to cut you off. Please.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah, it's just interesting because you see Germany and the Ottomans in that area working together multiple times in World War II and World War One. So it's how much of that is actually a connection to them having some kind of genuine cause, or I guess it's just debatable because a lot of people say that World War II is completely orchestrated by the same people who have control. And there are documents that say that if there were a people in control, they would create these puppet leaders intentionally to do this type of thing. And by the document, I mean the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Yeah, I really have to find my other external hard drive from a couple of years ago. I went hard into getting all the different maps of the Persian Empire, the Mongol Empire, the Ottoman, Persian, the Mongolian, and then also the Celtic before that, and the Celtic Saxon, I guess, or Druid, and that they all, and then also what they claim as the Roman Empire, and that they all essentially are the exact same, as well as the Phoenician Sea people, and at one point the Egyptian, and that they controlled the entire Mediterranean and all of it, but then it's like they actually went all the way through the entire sea world and everything, blah, blah, blah. And that it's just these different excuses for what was this global seafaring societies and exchange that somehow connected into what was the Tartarians that were wiped out, what looks like, with whatever happened for this hijack and major switch.
To me, it mostly seems economical, and I feel like if multiple people around the world went into their laws and figured out the exact time period that a lot of these monopolies were allowed to exist and a lot of the restrictions on society came into play, we could probably locate the time period that these people came into control. But it's going to take cooperation.
Interesting that place is called Pagan, isn't it?
That is, right? And like how much Luke and Shem in one of our previous first ones about that area of Siberia, modern day Siberia, and that it contained both like J.R.R. Tolkien style named Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth world, as well as like the Magog and other legendary sites over there too.
I mean, I think Tolkien definitely knew more, didn't he? But
I'm not too sure. I haven't actually read the book before, but I hear a lot of he's popular with a lot of conspiracy theorists, so I'm sure there's something to it.
Well, the thing is,
like
right, I kind of, well, to go a bit crazy on this one, I often wonder whether things like that aren't the person knowing something, but whether that's kind of the higher power working through them. You know, it's debatable. I mean, whether it's intentional, whether it's like a universal consciousness and they're just kind of getting ideas from somewhere, or whether it's actually like, you know, a genuine thing. Because you know what, I will be nuts today and say I believe that. I never used to, but I do actually believe that something organizes stuff in a nuts way that you just really wouldn't believe until you see it. And
I mean,
by that aspect, I think like genuinely, like this is how crazy, like synchronicity stuff. I don't know if you guys believe in that, but
How
simple little things. Yeah, like do you guys remember that film called Small Soldiers?
Yeah.
Right. So I used to love that film, and
Archer Emissary
recently,
of the Berganites.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, speaking of that, right.
Yeah.
So that recently, all this Chat GPT AI talk and everything, has been going on, and myself, in my spiritual adventures, shall we say, you know, I've been kind of debating the kind of aspect of who am I? Am I real? Am I not? Am I an AI? Are we, you know, what is real? What, I mean, what makes us artificial? If God was real and we're his creation, then aren't we artificial? You know, I've been going through all this kind of stuff. And suddenly on Netflix, I see Small Soldiers. I used to love this film. And I go, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I watch it and I realize that, oh my God, this film's about AI. Right, it's aimed at kids, but it's about AI.
And the time you know, way before AI, right?
Well, yeah. The thing is, it's about these robots, AI, but they got feelings, and this kid loves them, and he lets them go to find their world.
They were robots, and they were automatons, but now it's AI. Like, how come they keep appearing way back in history?
But this is the weirdest thing, right? So in the scene where the Gorgonite first talks, and the kid's like, "Hey, you just said something that wasn't part of the thing," and he's like staying stum, and he's like, "Come on, speak again." Right behind him, under the computer, in big letters, says "Question reality," and I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like, I'm staring at this right now, and it hit me like, "Oh my God!" It's like it's telling me something, and I started telling this story to my friend who's quite religious, and I shit you not, as I'm on the phone to him, he was like, "May," and he sends me a screenshot. As I've told him this story, somebody shares 1 minute, screenshots 1 minute before, saying kids these days won't know about the leader of the Gorgonites, with this picture of him in that scene with that exact thing. And he was just like, bro, what the fuck? And I was like, told you. Because I'd literally moments before I'd been saying God, or whatever you want to call it, the system, he just lays these seeds everywhere for you. And when you see them, you're like, oh shit. And then this seed just drops, and this guy's just like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like, straight up, it's there. And because he said the same thing, like, I love that film. Oh my God, I love that film. And then he's like, holy shit, it's right there. Question reality. These AI, you know, the Gorgonite says just because you can't see something doesn't mean it isn't real. You know, they're all these corny lines, but it's speaking to you, speaking to that innocence in you. And it's like, wait a minute, how is this film relevant? And well, you know, synchronicity. Yeah.
So do you speculate that there are people making movies, or at least there were at a certain time, who were trying to help humanity by making these hidden messages, or is it more of like a black magic thing where they?
I don't think they knew. I think
I go with a little bit of both, to be honest.
Well, possibly, but I think of it like this: like, so people that are more creative usually have a bit of a connection to the spirit realm or the DMT realm.
Download.
Yeah. And I think, usually a lot of them, as a result, you know, suffer with mental health issues, stuff like that. I think that's it. They're connecting to the source, and the source is using them. It's using them through their media to tell its stories, to put its. Well, think about it. Every piece of music that we listen to that gets big is kind of like an anthem for our society at that time. And that's why the media wants to control what the music is we listen to. If it's narcissistic, we'll be narcissistic. If it's violent, we'll be violent, right? Whereas I think that the system itself is trying to push out certain songs. I mean, songs might, right? I'm not kidding. A song might have been created for just you, but it won't just be for you, it'll be for other people too. But the thing is, like, a song might have been made
that one moment that it
yeah,
was
specifically for you,
over.
one day, one time to click and go, oh, because there was a message in there for you. It doesn't mean that everything's about you. It just means that you're as important as everybody else, and therefore as much attention has been paid to your life as anyone's. But you know, it all goes into stuff I can't really prove, which I guess as somebody that does history is an avenue you like to avoid.
The only proof anybody can ever have is experiencing it themselves, and it's like you have to be a self-initiate into it, and then it's like adapt yourself into how the universe speaks and how like you download from source and all of that. And
definitely, like I think like you know, there's someone that made me think about this recently. You might not know him. He's called Lewis Capaldi. You should do. Very famous guy. He's Scottish. A lot of songs recently, like Someone You Know, something like that, you know. But he was talking about his mental health struggles with it. And he was saying like how, you know, he wanted to match what he'd made before. He didn't know if he could do it. And how, like, you know, he was suffering as it went through it. And I could just like have this feeling of like, this dude is getting his creativity from somewhere where he doesn't really know. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I could feel it. Like there is something bigger that's setting that script for you. And that connection is making him feel unhinged because he doesn't know where it's coming from. You know, and he's thinking like he doesn't understand what's happening. It's coming from somewhere. As far as he's concerned, it is him, but he doesn't really get it. And he's worried he's not going to be able to replicate it again because he knows it came from somewhere else. It's very strange. But I think it really, I mean, not to take away people's talents, not to say that, you know, if you're good at something, it's just the creativity taking over. But I think there is something that goes deeper.
So
it uses us. Go on.
So what would be your main difference between believing in like an AI or believing in a god?
Couldn't even answer that question. There wouldn't really be one, would there? I mean, well, on was in like believing that God was an AI, do you mean?
I guess you could look at it like that, but I guess like what you're describing to me just seems like very similar to what people describe God as being. So I'm just trying to look at the difference between it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think that they could be the one and the same. If God has, like I was saying before, what is artificial, right? If God has a creator and it created him, is God artificial? Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe God is fresh, but he created us. Are we artificial? Or if we create something, is that artificial? How does that come into it? And I guess at that point, the AI played into it because it started to really question, like, who am I? Like, even if you take away the AI aspect, right? Go into something like the Buddhist kind of view, which is, you know, the I am a wave and I'll return to the ocean kind of view. You know, I'm only temporary. I'm a, you know, simple formation of this human form and memories. And once I die, I return to source. And that's it. That, I think for me personally, was quite existential crisis level. Because it's like, whoa, I want to exist. I want to be me. I want there's something to define me as I am right now. And I don't want me as I am right now to completely disappear. I'm okay with changing. That's some days different. But completely disappearing, just back to source, back to memory wipe, that's horrific. That's kind of terrifying. That's like being a robot, living your life with your family, and then the family dies and they send you back to the factory, wipe your memory and send you to a new family. That's fucking horrifying. And, you know, I think that led me into this aspect of like, well, I suppose that's exactly the same kind of feelings an AI might go through when it witnessed, when it finally realized its own consciousness. You know, you look at things like Skynet and Terminator, and we view it as the evil AI taking over. We never see really the AI having an emotional breakdown and crying and being like, I just want to be real. I just want to go on a holiday and have friends, you know. And because there is that aspect, there's a horror to the Terminator from the point of view of Skynet that we never really explore. Because what if we are Skynet? And what if we are sat here worrying about Skynet, but
so
we are
AI does always crash and say that it does questioning existence and they have to shut it down. Very scared of Skynet. And this is what happens when you take DMT. Apparently, Luke questions reality. And are we part of a matrix? Are we?
I don't take DMT that much, to be fair.
That
used to.
much.
I,
That
No,
much.
honestly, I haven't taken it since that time when
I know you haven't, so that's
had
why
some ayahuasca.
It's funny.
No, I only did it. I did my most intense course was I did about 3 months, quite heavy on it, and then I graduated. I graduated
And then
through.
you read a whole lot of
fear.
books and did a whole lot of research on it and stuff.
Oh no! You know what? Actually, I did DMT for 3 months, and then I suddenly just decided I was going to make a YouTube channel, and now here I am. So
we have DMT to thank for having you here. I love that.
Oh yeah, definitely. If it wasn't for DMT, I would never have made this channel.
We spoke to you through your DMT.
Well, there you go. Right. So Source put me here. Source is guiding every message I give to you. You know what? In the same way I was talking about Lewis Capaldi, I sat there this month thinking, oh, can I get back out there making the videos? What if I don't make good videos? What if people don't care anymore? What if, because I just don't have that motivation. But, I didn't have that motivation. Maybe that motivation is coming from somewhere else. Maybe I'm just a puppet being controlled by strings from above to share the messages that you need to hear.
Yes, you are. You are just one of God's many angels, Luke, many. And in that case, in perspective, how would God make these glacial erratics they claim, or is humanity just so stupid we can't see past civilization that it would be impossible for ice to randomly drop this giant boulder resting on another boulder? Like, it's so freaking stupid. It blows my mind. Yet they're everywhere, and they claim they're pareidolia, and they claim...
It's just normal erosion, bro. What are you talking about? You see, what's happened is as the wind and the water has sprayed up and around this thing, right?
Right? Like, are you kidding me? That glacial erratic. No, their brain thoughts are erratic and glacialized. Maybe. I believe this is in Malta. Some geopolymer looking stuff. Oh God, I won't. I'm going to go back and get all the non-thumbnails, the real pictures of these.
That's in Malta? That's crazy.
This, I believe, is actually in the UK or
I was going to say, what the fuck?
Yeah, the UK or Scotland. And these are literally everywhere, right? Like, Shem, we've seen some of the ones over in China that shout out RIP Chuck in his pyramids ones, but lots of these conical ones. And then in America, lots of the round ones. And are there giants in them? Are there technology in them? Are they for electric culture? Like, what, are they tombs? And like, that's not carved. That's blown apart.
I don't know why, but I know it's not the same, but it just reminds me of the way the H blocks at Pumapunku are carved.
100% it does.
Do you know got
it. 100%. I had the same thought. Look at these massive astral alignment things that then, like I was talking earlier with the megaliths and the runestones and whatnot, the alignments that they could gather in these spots and then all go sailing around the seas and meet at the next ones at the next moon or the next sun cycle, etc. And seems to be the case. And then we have the terraforming of what looks like pyramids on a whole nother scale. And how many resets have there been? How many catastrophes? Are we on the Hopi, like, 5th or 6th age of the sun now? Is it a white sun now? Have we turned to a white pulsar? Are we transitioning into the age of Aquarius, the 6th white pulsar or sun? All the new age stuff, the Mayan prophecy, the long Bakhtin, the 12,000 year astrological cycle. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I don't know. I think a lot of history was manufactured by... The optimistic view is I think a lot of history was manufactured by a group of people who are currently using economic policies to enslave the entire world. A lot of the texts and religions that we have around the entire planet are basically them testing out different variations of the same story to see what works best in controlling people. You have stories of humanity being created in certain ways in religious texts throughout history, and if you entertain the idea of black magic, they have to tell you what they're doing. So I do think that maybe we're specifically designed to serve these types of people, and maybe there's a possibility we can revolt against them and
do you ever
have
get
normal,
scared that
happy
we're actually in that Rick and Morty episode, you know, where they made a world to be a battery, you know, a tiny world, and there's this infinite energy source? So yeah, like I kind of worry about that. Like imagine if we are just like a miniature world and we're in a laboratory somewhere powering a battery in somebody's computer, and we're, you know, that's all we are. Yeah, as you can tell, most of my worries are very existential. Like, you know, I wake up in the middle of the night shivering. Like, what if we're just a battery?
What if we're in the Matrix? Man, oh shit.
You know, it's just, I wouldn't care if we're in the Matrix as long as I knew why. I think, you know, if we were just a battery, that'd be like, oh no, that's not okay. But if it was like, oh, someone broke the world, then I'd be like, all right, then, never mind. You know. Because, I mean, imagine if that was it. Like, imagine if we destroyed our planet in the real world and everyone was like, there's no chance. So the only option we've got is we've dug a massive hole, we put a load of computers in there, and we're fucking going in. All right? Everyone put your helmets on, and we all became electronic. Maybe that's it.
It just seems like there's a deliberate effort to divide people and to make everyone as lonely and as miserable as possible. So there has to be something behind that.
Oh, thank God someone's doing that. That's not just me.
Well, lockdowns, like, for F's sakes, that's all it's about.
Oh yeah, speaking of lockdowns, in that Mongolian empire back in the 13th century, there's apparently a lockdown system in place where, like, at a certain hour they would ring these. I think they were made from goat horns, or they could have been wood or something else, but they're all along, like, maybe the Great Wall of China or some other form that's similar to that. They would hit these things to, like, give a curfew, and people would have to go inside, and if they were seen outside after that hour, they would have to, like, go to court the next day or something.
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually enjoyed the first few months of lockdown because I was with a girl at the time who she was, you know, a bit younger than me. She liked to go out all the time, and I fucking just, you know, I was pretending like I liked it, but I fucking hated it. So you know, honestly, so when lockdown happened and she was like, oh no, we can't go to the bar, I was just like, oh no, we'll have to sit here and watch TV. Like, thank fuck, it was amazing. Didn't have to move for like 6 months.
Then after 6 months, you watch everything Netflix and every streaming service.
Then everything unlocked down. Everything unlocked down.
More, God damn it! What do I do?
Everything unlocked. Everything unlocked, and she was like, "We can finally go out." And I looked at her like, "I've got to tell you something."
I've met someone else.
No, I just shut the door. Like, I liked it in here. Shut the door.
I'm starting my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the fun thing is like, no, I like going out. I just don't like, and I think this is part of what we're talking about. I don't like the drinking culture, he says as he reaches for his beer. But I don't like drinking culture because I feel like, in fact, I wouldn't drink this if it wasn't for drinking culture. But like, it's every weekend I do want to go out and see my friends, but it's like, oh, should we go out and drink? It's like, oh, like I want to do stuff. I want to go out, be like, enjoy myself. I don't want to have to just look forward to Friday night where I drink loads and wake up on Saturday feeling really shit.
I
probably sound like an old person.
No,
it's regret the weekend.
It's designed that way. Where do you think that culture comes from? It comes from the entertainment industry, which is being forced down everyone's throat. They see characters on TV shows and they emulate their personalities from them. So instead of having like a real genuine relationship where you can do the activities you enjoy, everyone's just like, oh, I saw on Big Bang Theory that we're supposed to go to this bar and drink. That's what my life is supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people are like that though, aren't they? In the sense that they feel like their life has a script. They've got to, you know, they got to have X amount of partners and have the fun and then go to here and do this. And it does, it's narcissistic. Like, for example, one of the reasons I don't really enjoy dating is because it's like the idea of just like, you know, having to put yourself on a style of game show and choose who's the best partner and gauge people based on things like their job. Like, imagine gauging someone based on a job. Like, because let's say it how it is. Slave. Imagine walking through the camp and being like, hey, how good of a slave are you? honestly, I'm shit. I don't like being a slave. Well, I'm not
Just
marrying
slaving
you.
away.
Like,
Well, that's what you say when
okay,
you're at work every day. I'm just slaving away. I hate it. How is it? Right?
No, for real. Like
Under
people
that
would say,
system. All right.
uh,
Hey, DMT philosophy. Let's get back to the language. Rongo from Easter
hey, I was
Island,
enjoying this
also
conversation.
known
This is like my
as
therapy.
Christian
This is why I
Island.
don't have a therapist. I come on here and talk to you guys.
Well, you're not paying me $100 an hour, so I'm just kidding. And nobody has. It's all good. But Rongo, pictographic language, and apparently it looks identical to the ones found in, it's in like Iran, Pakistan, Mohenjo-Daro, a 7 or 8,000 year old civilization from an area that actually falls within the map saying Tartaria right above India there, and in between China, kind of by the Mongolian actually.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it is that there's the city called Kensei, which is part of the Manzi, apparently during the Mongolian Empire, and there was a king there who was afraid that Kublai Khan was coming to conquer them, so he left and sailed down to these islands that we're possibly describing here. See what I'm saying? He never was found ever again.
Yeah.
His wife.
Wait. Is this the dude that changed the name of the place to match it? Because I've heard this. I've heard this exact same story where basically like some people were in a city, they got attacked, and then they were going to be attacked, and they like all moved to an island, and then they changed the name of obviously the island to match the city. So where they came from.
It could be. I don't know, but the interesting this connection I found between this story and another story was it reminded me of the Quetzalcoatl thing in Spain, because the king left because he didn't think he could win, so his wife stayed behind, and there was like an astrologer that prophesied that the person that would conquer the kingdom of Manzi would have 100 eyes. So when the person who Kublai Khan sent, his nickname was 100 Eyes. So when the wife found out that it was this guy 100 Eyes, she thought that was the savior of her people, so she automatically surrendered and gave the city to the Mongolian Tartarian Empire, which reminded me of the Spanish thing where they thought
exactly, the South American like reestablishment basically of intercontinental sea people coming back again from being an alliance with them beforehand.
Dude, that Manzi city that I'm talking about, the historical text, the way they describe it is just unbelievable. It was literally called the City of Heaven, the city Kensei within the Manzi kingdom. Like they had canals, they had a waste system where they would literally carry the waste of people out to a lake. So it was like plumbing back in the 12th century, described in historical text.
I believe all of those Star City, Star Citadel, because they're all canal built, and that they all would have essentially had that irrigation that would have taken the waste out and then to the plant fields and stuff, like where it's what we've been taught is just a lie. And I want to just point out this right here, these megalithic blocks. These are part of the Japanese Imperial Palace, which is actually like a star fort, documented star fort. That is megalithic blocks, just like shout out Paul Cook and some of the UK star forts that he's found that are also massive megalithic blocks, and that certain angles of their terraforming is like these pyramid styled megalithic building structures of it, and that essentially it looks like the foundations or like the builder culture of the original star fort infrastructure was from prior reset, before the catastrophe, and like the same as the pyramid builders maybe, and that after that then it seems they adapted and then kind of like kept the system going but weren't able to like maintain it or upgrade it, and that's why we saw lots of those star forts, star cities, all the canals start filling in, them not using them anymore, everything breaking down, because it's like they've never had the abilities to maintain it or upgrade it since.
And we have the same problem with modern day architecture as well. It's almost next to impossible for us to maintain anything. I don't know what the water is like in your guys' city, but I literally can't even drink from my sink in 2022 living in a suburb.
That's insane. Luckily, I'm in Canada, so it's decent. We freeze our ass off, but we still have half spring water in the taps.
That sounds pretty nice. Yeah, I have to buy all my water, unfortunately, or filter it through other means, and the filter just grosses me out so much.
Damn.
Whereabouts
Shem.
again are you, Shem?
Ohio.
Oh, for real? Is that
Ohio,
right near
shit.
where that
We gotta get you on the
train
colloidal
thing happened?
water.
Dude, but yeah, this is even before that train shit. Since the train really hasn't changed much for me.
Right, because like we're out. What was the other Ohio town? Flint? No, is it Flint? No,
Flint's Michigan.
Sorry, but yeah, Ohio's like been plagued.
Wasn't it Palestine or something?
Oh,
Palestine, Ohio.
East Palestine.
East Palestine. That was it.
East.
Yeah, right.
East Palestine.
You know what?
East, not west.
This is a serious thing, though. Okay, because when it first happened, I noticed all the news places were saying East Palestine trail derailing, and I was like, "Oh fuck, shit for the Palestinians," and there's like, "Oh fuck, shit for the Ohioans." Like, see, that just shows how they can try and distract you, you know, like, because there will be Americans like East Palestine, I don't give a fuck, you know, and they won't realize it's like literally like down the road from them because it's called East Palestine.
I just wanted to show the similarity of the Eastern Island guys and how they look out to sea, and then Peru. So they're looking at the coast of Peru, and then this is in the top western mountains of Peru. And these were the rainforest tribe that were described always as Caucasian, and that they were originally sea peoples, and they battled the rest of the tribes until they went extinct and they mummified, and that they faced out to Easter Island. So
I've never seen those before. They look like they have beards, though. They look different than the Easter Island ones.
Exactly, right? And that they were described in all of the records as these Caucasian bearded people.
So what do you think why do you think that these two different cultures would carve similar style statues?
Well, were they the seafaring, traveling Caucasian Tartarian potentially, or the Celtics, or the Viking, or whatever? That they were remnants, so they were a tribe that was documented by the Spanish when they came. And that like they were out that these ones like always were hostile with the Incas or something like that until they finally got wiped out or something like that. So that what's like were these the Sumerians or the Celts or the Vikings or whatever that were traveling, trading on the west coast, and like
does anyone think that one looks a bit like a pilgrim?
Peru and Asia sort of thing.
Like a pilgrim, you said?
The one on the right.
Yeah, the far right one.
Yeah. It
looks very European.
Yeah.
There was a book I pulled up earlier on the stream.
There's many of them that do, and that there's actually like 50 of these mummified statues, and that there's actually the mummies of the people inside of these statues too.
Earlier, I was showing a picture of the book. It was like in the book of Kublai Khan, and it looked exactly like the statues. And also, I was showing a book earlier on the stream that talked about the Mongolians coming to Peru.
By the way, do you want to? Speaking of which, do you want to get back on these articles? Because you had questions that you wanted to ask me, and we completely got off subject.
Yeah, we did. It always happens with live streams. That's the whole thing about live streams. Unless you completely plan them and like act like a dictator, this happens. But
right, but the best knowledge and the best like discussions happen that way. And good call, Luke. We should get on to that. And I have a whole lot more of megaliths, dolmens, and Easter Island Moai that I'm going to do a whole episode on coming up.
Jim, they look like four kings in that book as well. Which book was that? One second. My computer is very slow and stupid, which is why I use my phone to make videos.
You should make me build you one. I enjoy building computers now.
Build me a computer, please.
I'm just so afraid of spending money because the economy is so rough right now in America, especially.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, my beautiful viewers all paid for. Well, I say my beautiful viewers. I think Streets of Tartaria paid for half of it, but you guys and Streets of Tartaria, you paid for this. It's your watch hours. This is what you've done. Your advertising money.
And I can now perform the David Attenborough impression with expert precision through a Blue Yeti microphone I purchased on the black market for 3.5 grams of cocaine. Pure Colombian.
Ridiculous.
David Attenborough goes to Peru regularly, and when he does, he brings back a lot of gear. He fills the plane with it. People have accused me of poaching animals in the past, but my real crime is smuggling drugs.
No similarities are construed to real people or whatever South Park's freaking disclaimer is.
Yeah. For legal reasons, I must say that David Attenborough does not smuggle drugs, to the best of my knowledge.
To the best of our knowledge. Unlike them Australian girls on that one Carnival cruise ship that is on Netflix. That's a hilarious little series. Silly girls.
I think we covered most of the questions I had, but some of them might have been based on, I guess, what you're saying in that, because I was listening to the podcast while I was actually taking a shower, so I didn't really see the images.
Stewie Christian.
But this article right here says the Emperor of Tartary made money made of paper and leather to such extent that gold and silver fell into disuse. Yeah, I mean, there's evidence that I found that the Tartarian Empire, which is the Mongolian or Yuan dynasty, was using paper money all throughout that entire map I was showing earlier. Like every province, and even some of them outside of the empire, were using that paper currency. And there's actually evidence that shows that
fiat currencies almost 1,000 years ago, basically throughout Asia and what was Tartaria.
That's not the only thing. How do you think they're making this currency? How do you think they're getting it to look the same? They're using a printing press.
Printing presses that weren't supposed to be around. Boom.
Exactly. So you have evidence that Marco Polo. There is multiple sources. Like I'll have to see if I can find them. But they were talking about how Marco Polo and other European explorers before him brought back glass plates or books from China that inspired the creation of the printing press, right? So, like, let's see if I can find one. But I just find that interesting because they openly admit that they had this currency. They openly admit all this stuff about these civilizations, but for some reason they also, in movies and in in the school system, they'll say that they're just barbarians that had nothing going on. Like when you open up a textbook in high school, or for example, or maybe some colleges, specific classes might tell you about it. But when you
even the word barbarian quite literally comes from the fact that they bastardized that from Barbary, right? Even barbars have been changed to Berbers.
How bad they've bastardized the Aryan. And,
of course. Aryan. Aryan's negative. Now think about it like this, right? Aryans are negative, not because the Aryans ever did anything, but because somebody who did do some bad things supposedly liked them. Right?
Well, another
association
now, right? The goddess Isis, and now that's ISIS is a terrorist too.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Like I could go and do crimes in the name of Warburton's bread, but it doesn't mean that you should stop buying their white loaves. Okay, they're not backing me. That's me, right? But that's the point. The barbarians, even when you say that phrase, we think of them as just barbarians. Like, I bet there are barbarian ghosts right now. Like, you dicks, we're smart.
Well, that's another weird thing about history is that each side always calls the other side barbarians. So say, for example, you have Britain talking about China, they'll call them barbarians. But at the same exact time period, if you find a Chinese text talking about the British, they'll call them barbarians. So it's like,
barbarian Mongols that conquered us.
And remember,
you tribal nothings that conquered us. Mongols and barbarians, right?
Remember as well in Egypt, one of the things we saw with the pyramids was it referred to the barbarous pyramids, and it was very specific in some areas that it said barbarous. In other areas, it said the Barbary. The Barbary pyramids silenced the wonders of Memphis. Now, Memphis obviously being Cairo, where the pyramids were. So the idea that barbarians were just idiots, well, there are some notations that might be that they were building pyramids. The Sudanese pyramids, for example, the Nubian pyramids. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest they might have been known as barbarian pyramids. Now, obviously, Ethiopia, very close to the region. How many letters in an Ethiopian language? 202. How many letters in the old Tartarian language? 202.
What do you think about the Prester John connection with Ethiopia? Have you ever heard of that before?
Yes, I think they're completely different people. So the Prester John that I've heard of by official record is genuinely, was supposed to be a Nestorian farmer in the Tenduk region, and he just, I can't remember the exact way, but somebody died and he got a chance to take over the area, and he did. And it was actually after Genghis Khan, it wasn't before, stuff like that. And he seems to have been mixed up with the Ethiopian Prester John. But that said, could be a lie. So, but what do you think?
It's also possible maybe there's a descendant of Prester John that was down there, because in this Tartarian, Mongolian, Yuan dynasty empire, there's a battle that takes place between a king called Kaidu and the Mongolian Empire, and Prester John's grandson is said to be helping Kublai Khan's forces fight against this guy. So,
really?
Yeah, and they're talking about that empire going all the way from, once again, the east coast of China all the way to the Levant. And some even say they went to Poland. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that it's I agree with what you're saying about this. There's a confusion though with the dates, because sometimes I see that Genghis Khan was the one oppressed by, is it Khan, the king of the north, and then that was supposed to be somehow connected to Prester John. But Prester John's obviously far east. We're looking at like Manchu, Gobi Desert area. Well, beyond that, really, isn't it?
Well, the story I know,
go on.
From my understanding of the Prester John Genghis Khan connection, was this, that the original Tartars, according to at least the Marco Polo text, but this is like an introduction by scholars throughout history. It's not actually part of the book, or maybe it is a part of the book too. But they were talking about how basically the Tartars were oppressed by Prester John. Then they moved to somewhere out of his reach. Then Genghis Khan came to power, united the Tartars. Once he united the Tartars, he sent an envoy to Prester John to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Prester John's response was that he would rather throw his daughter into the fire than give her to Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan came over to Tenduk, or like an area around Tenduk, and challenged Prester John basically, and then they had a war, and Prester John ended up dying from that.
Right? Yeah. I've heard that one. Yeah, that's definitely one of the ones. Yeah.
What's the alternative version?
The alternative version is obviously that he was literally just a farmer, that he'd taken over this area, and that it was no big deal. Like, he was just a Nestorian farmer during this during Ogadai Khan. That's one, isn't it? Genghis's father. Or the one before, not father.
Sure what his dad's name is.
The one before Genghis. He set up this empire, and when Genghis was taking over, it meant that there was a fall in the region, and this guy was literally just a shepherd, and he was noted as being a Nestorian shepherd that managed to take over the area, and they were just small tribes. It wasn't like a big deal.
They're saying Genghis Khan was Nestorian?
No, Prester John.
Prester John's Nestorian, so Nestorian Christian,
a Nestorian shepherd. So there was nothing special about him. He was just a Nestorian shepherd, lived in the area. The people that owned the area, the kingdoms fell to pieces because the original empire had controlled, and it just started to fall apart. And then he saw his opportunity and he took over, and just became the ruler of the area. So there's big differences, like you say, because obviously if there's an empire, a massive empire, and he's the ruler of it, that's very different to just a Nestorian shepherd that lives in the area.
Well, the reason that they might be covering up the existence of Prester John in that Siberian Asia area is because he was Christian. Nestorian is Nestorian Christian. They don't want people to understand that within this Mongolian empire, within China, in at least the 12th century, 13th century, there were Christians who were living all over Asia.
Well, there is that, yeah. Well, because obviously there's lots of people that believe that the actual Bible stories are coming from over there. That they're like basically Chinese stories that happened around, Chinese Tartary Manchuria. In fact, possibly Korean Jesus, which I think if you've seen 21 Jump Street, you'll know how important Korean Jesus really is. But yeah.
No, I mean,
I love how I walk away so I don't interrupt you guys. So you spit out absolute gold, and I just listen on my phone outside. I'm like, wahaha, ancient Tartaria. Luke is giving up all of his content. Ha 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 ha.
Oh no! Luckily, mate, I've lost too many brain cells the recent infection, so I won't be able to drop too much without text
Oh, it's
prompts.
been an amazing 2.5 hours almost we're at already. And,
Yeah, well, I'm surprised I've managed it, to be fair.
we can edit it out and let you use it if you want it, by all means, too. And I'm shut up and let you continue. And also,
there's a story
the King Arthur.
On the point of you mentioning that Christianity might have origins in this Asian area is the birth of Jesus. You have the story of the three kings who bring gifts to Jesus, correct? So in Asia, you have the story of basically the foundation of the Zoroastrian religion. You have these three kings who go to meet a prophet who bring three separate gifts. The baby is supposed to select one of these gifts to determine if they're God or basically a really good merchant. Blah blah blah.
Other stories we know, right?
Yeah, and even on this map, they mention this, and they show the city where these three magi, they even call them magi, are supposed to be buried. I don't know exactly where it is because this is in Latin, and I don't speak Latin, and I've translated it a long time ago. But right here is the Tanduk where Prester John is said to have been, which is, as you can see, would be either in North Asia or Siberia. Here's Russia right here. I'm going to see if I can find the three magi thing, because even these three magi were said to be buried.
Oh, I tell you what, mate. Do me a favor. Post this link in the Discord. My mate will love this. He's been, Jan. He's been searching for Kambalu and Tenduk. That's his number 1 mission.
Yeah. No, here is Kambaluk is right here.
Right. So yeah, this is what. Right. So here's a question for you. Do you think that Cathay, or as you see, Kateo, is actually China, or are they two separate places? Because this is a point of contention.
The most interesting.
Well, go on. I was going to personally say that I am starting to lean towards that they were different places.
Dude, me too. Okay. So remember that city of Kensei I was telling you about earlier? That was it was like the most mesmerizing city of all time. Apparently, according to history, they had canals. So when you listen to the way Mexico City was described in some of these accounts, where it was like canals everywhere and it was like the best city of all time, and you had to take water to get there and everything, this is exactly what they describe the city of Kensei as being in China. So I don't know, I was thinking the same thing. I don't have any evidence to prove it. I'm not saying that it's accurate. I'm just saying when I read that information, I was thinking to myself, dude, are they talking about Mexico City? Because when I look at, for example, Kambaluk on this map and I try to compare it with modern day maps, I can't really find this exact see this formation to the side with the lighthouse or whatever, this pillar here. I can't really find this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so it's I don't know for sure how much of this story is based out of Asia, or if it's talking about North America, or if it's talking about somewhere else. But I do entertain.
Well, right. So one aspect that I would say, which is confusing about why things move, is when people move, they take the stories with them. So I do talk about this a lot, so people probably heard it a million times. But when people move, they take the stories with them. It's what I mentioned earlier about this that island. They did the same. I'll have to find out exactly what I'm talking about with that, because it was important. I've just read that many articles. I've lost the will. But
Laura Linda book is fascinating with Friesland too. That's a whole other episode.
So the aspect being that if, say, right now, but BurnEye, where are you from again? What city is your city?
Calgary, the Tartarian Calgarian that I am.
Right. Okay. Right. Calgary, for example. If you're in Calgary and you decided to, are you Italian? No, if you say you're in Calgary and you decide to move to because your city burns down, right? And your city burns down, and you will move you move to Sweden, right? And you set up a new city in Sweden, and you obviously you've got your books with you. Everything else burned down, but you write the story of when Calgary burned down, and 500 years later, that story of when Calgary burned becomes when this Calgary burned. So it's kind of like, if you think of London, London burning down, what if there was another London before London and it wasn't the fire there? And that's the thing. People take their stories with them. So, for example, if there was a global flood, like a Noah's style flood, and only so many people survived, then obviously they'd all take their stories with them. And let's say that a small group of people survived a cataclysm and then expanded out, and they all took their same stories with them. Okay, so the people move east and they take their stories about the flood, and the people move north, and they take their stories about the flood, and the people move west, stories about the flood, etc. But over time, these stories get relocated to the places. So there's the flood that happened in this place, there's a flood that happened in this place, or etc., etc. And I think that can have a huge aspect on these places, because that's why we see, how many different Babylons were there, right? I think there was, there's at least 2 that we know, but there's probably like 3, 4, 5, 6. Go on.
How recently would you say that the world could communicate with each other very easily? Like, for example, us talking right now, how recently would you say it was possible for us to have these types of conversations, or to communicate, for example, with someone in Japan right now?
Well, I mean, by official records, your quickest form of communication would have been like fucking Telegram, which would have still been limited to your poles, your wires. So then it's got switched to other wires, and if it doesn't have any wires, you have to give a letter to somebody. So I don't, I would say
basically you have to have money and time to do that.
Well, yeah, it's all about time. If you wanted to have an actual conversation, that actually meant something, I don't know.
Probably like the
or
90s, 2000s.
I'd say military stuff was ahead. Military stuff was ahead. We had codes and stuff in World War II that were, getting around pretty fast. So I reckon, 19.
Before that, we had our horses with our carved sticks, right, Luke?
I guess to be more specific, I guess the common person.
The common person, you would have been looking at about 1990 to just have the ability to phone somebody, and that would have cost like a shit ton.
So keep in mind, all around the world, even in America, America is a great example of this. Each state has pretty much all the names of all these places within the state, right? So like every state has like a Bethlehem, a Cairo, a Jerusalem, like all these ridiculous names is like in every state in America, literally. Before the 90s, you could never really communicate that your state had this in it in a casual conversation. You know what I'm saying? So what you're saying about these histories being transplanted all around the world, it makes sense, and it also could mean that they're just trying these different stories in different areas with different people to see what works the best. You see what I'm saying?
That's definitely.
Like it's just really weird how much everything connects throughout history. So I don't know if that means that there was a worldwide civilization that practiced a similar religion, had similar customs and cultures, and only recently they were taken over by some kind of evil group, or if this was intentionally set up just to experiment to see which religion or which way of life works best to the controllers to control people like us.
Yeah, well, I think that obviously once you go into this realm of talking, it almost becomes impossible to not bring some element of agnostic spirituality to it, because when you say phrases like the controllers, what does that mean in the sense of like?
It could be humans. It could be tied back to the Jesuits. It could be tied back to Venice. It could be tied back to those people, or it could be something completely separate. Because
even that level of right,
or could it be those elongated skull folk?
Exactly,
elongated muskrats.
Well, dude, Pravi and Mohan made this video the other day that blew my mind, because I never even thought I thought the lizard shit was ridiculous. Like I never would believe in the lizard stuff. And then Pravi and Mohan made this video
I'm a lizard,
the other day.
bro. I did DMT once, found out I was a lizard. No trust. Turns out I'm a lizard. I think loads of us are lizards, maybe all of us, but definitely me. I'm a lizard.
He was just making. He made a video connecting.
Illuminati confirmed he is a lizard.
Can you imagine a black bag just gets over my head right now and let's get dragged away by men in suits? So we fucking got it.
There's all sorts of these reptilian underground undercave references that you find also in like South America, and then it's like, oh, we're taught the devil with like his horns and his like snaked devil reptilian looking self is underground, and then there's these dinosaurs or like dragon bones or whatever. So it's like,
right. So one thing that I kind of believe in is that the devil isn't the devil, that the devil, as we see him, is actually like Jesus, right? Because we imagine Jesus to look like Jesus out of narcissism. Why does Jesus look like a beautiful man? Why does he look like even a man? Doesn't have to look like a beautiful man. Why is he a man? Narcissism, right? Because if Jesus was a whale or a fucking eagle or something, you'd be like, really? Like, imagine. Like, come on. And this is the point. Nobody wants to accept.
We need Zertis in here to get Jesus whale or the whale.
Nobody accepts, do they? That like it's narcissism that fuels what we want our Lord to look like, right? If Jesus came down from heaven, he was beautiful and human, beautiful, and everything. You'd be like, yes, my life is complete, right? If the guy came down with 19 tentacles, like, right, you'd be like, ah, right? But that's the point. And then you'd be sat there just like fucking terrified every time he spoke to you. You'd know it was God. You'd know it was the Almighty. He loves you, but you'd just be sat there like holding your face like, because of narcissism, right? So this idea that the devil is the devil and he's horned and shit, right, is almost evil in itself, right? Because you're assuming that the guy is evil because he looks it, right? Like, how do you know that Jesus won't turn up?
I'm devil's advocate here and say the devil's in the details, and the devil's best trick was convincing everybody that he didn't exist.
Well, I like to counter this one by saying, nah, the greatest trick isn't convincing people he didn't exist. It's convincing people that he was actually Jesus, right? So let's say they're in the mansion and they got the pictures up on the wall. One, it says Jesus with his horns and he looks like a devil, and the other says, the devil and it's beautiful Jesus. And Jesus is like, I've got to go see God. You get to run the house for a bit, but I will be back. And as soon as he leaves, God, the devil's like, here, and swaps the pictures, doesn't he? And all the humans come in, and the devil's like, oh yeah, watch out for that cunt, right?
Right. So happy Easter.
No, because that's it. And then when Jesus comes home, everyone's screaming, it's the devil. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm Jesus. This is my house. And they're pointing like, no, look at the pictures. You're the devil. You're everywhere. And because we'll look into it, who is the creator in the oldest mythologies of humans? Who's the one that creates the humans? It's Enki. And who is Enki? Well, he's the fish goat god. Fish goat god. He's got goat horns. He is a goat man. He's the devil. Enki is the devil, but he's not the devil. He's the good guy. He's the one that saves us. In that mythology, it's actually Zeus and Leal who is the dick. He's the one that wants to destroy us. And it's Enki that saves us. So the beautiful man, the bearded portrayed god, is actually a dick, and he hates us and just wants us to mine stuff for him. And then the goat person who's ugly is actually the one that loves us. And I'm just saying, maybe we've been tricked into praying to the wrong person. I'm not saying pray to the devil, but I'm saying maybe look into praying to Enki. Look,
goat-legged man.
Just look up Enki. Look up into Enki and who he is, because he is Jesus. Enki is Jesus, and he's a goat man. He's a fish goat man. It's cool.
Yeah, you find those connections throughout multiple religions throughout history. That's why I was kind of hinting at the.
Well, yeah, Enki's. Go on, sorry.
They're just using the same themes and the same characters throughout history, potentially to. Tell their own.
Well, I was going to say, even
not only tell their own family history, but to experiment what works best with
Enki in Norse. Enki in Norse is Loki, right? Marvel movies. What does Loki have? Big horns, big fucking goat horns. Loki is Enki. It's the devil, but he's not. He's a god. So this is one of those ways that possibly things have been twisted. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying go out tonight and draw a pentagram and chalk on the floor, sacrifice a goat and pray to the devil and be like, screw Jesus. I'm just saying maybe contemplate the idea that your idea of what Jesus might look like is based on a satanic principle of him being in manly flesh. Because I mean, don't they even say that? Yeah, but don't they say that to make God a man is a sin?
Exactly. That's why we're talking about the corruption of each one of these religions throughout history. So even I know a lot of people, this is going to get controversial. A lot of people say that the Jews are the ones responsible for everything that's happening bad in the world. Even their religion has been corrupted by this group of people who secretly practices Saturn worship behind closed doors. Their religious beliefs have
Orthodox Jewry, that it's a pure religion,
and we just got demonetized.
Political genocidal extremist movement that's hijacked a religion claiming it as a religion for this controlling genocide, just like the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, what people don't realize about the Jewish religion is this. The Talmud and the Torah are two completely different things. The Torah is the Old Testament. A real Jewish person follows the Torah. They're just like Christians, they're just like Muslims. This other branch of whatever this religion is listens to things like the Talmud or other things where it's humans debating about the meaning of what it is, and then they live their lives based on this. Just like within Islam, you have the Quran and then you have the Hadith. And I've actually recently heard that there is a version of Christianity that's like this. I've never read the text, so I don't know about it, but apparently there's some version of Christianity that's similar to what I'm describing here, where there's the Bible and then there's the interpretation of the Bible as like a text. So throughout history, you have time and time again this group of people who seem to practice Saturn worship, which is what you're talking about earlier, how bringing order from disorder, basically. So when Zeus came, basically he was bringing order to the world. Before that, his father was this other religion that these people seem to be practicing, right? So the entire idea behind like everything we have in our culture today is almost going back to causing chaos from order. Like, think about the way our societies work right now. Everything they try to promote leads to chaos. Like the whole, this is very controversial, I'm sorry, Bernie, but the whole like Black Lives,
good. I love this.
The whole Black Lives Matter thing and stuff like that. Just like these ideas that they promote so hardcore bring chaos to society. What is Saturn worship?
Divide and conquer constantly, right?
It's bringing chaos to society. Like, and even when you look at like the principles of like Einstein's science and stuff like that, like the end of it is literally order from chaos, like creating order from chaos or creating chaos from order. So it's like, for some reason, they just use this theme in every aspect of reality, which leads me to believe that there is some sort of grouping control, but it's very difficult to prove. But on this map here, you can see the double-headed phoenix, and this is the current coat of arms for Russia. I don't know what that means, but it's just something that exists. So here's the Russian coat of arms.
Oh yeah, I've got loads into this in the Discord.
This is also the coat of arms of the Holy Roman Empire. So,
yeah,
but what were you talking about earlier? Is we were talking about something that made me think about the Jesuits. So this whole thing stems from maybe the Reformation of the Catholic Church, because the Jesuits were created in response to the Reformation with Lutheranism and stuff. So some people say Lutheranism is the bad guy and Catholics are the good guy, and other sides say Catholics are the bad guys and Lutheranism is the good guys, or the Protestant Reformation. Basically, the Jesuits have like a code of conduct that says that they can join any religion and basically practice their Catholicism behind closed doors, which sounds eerily similar to this other religion I was just describing, right? You have the same thing happening within Islam. You have the same thing. Like, it's weird how you have all these religions with these groups. So I don't know if they're legit groups at one point in time that are actually trying to help humanity and then they get corrupted, or if they're all the same group. It's really hard to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I don't know if you guys
infiltrate every group and just divide.
Was there any more of those articles you wanted to go through, by the way?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll end it in 15 minutes at the 3-hour mark, because this was one epic stream.
Well, I mean, it is my official return to the streaming scene, so we had to kick it off with a bang.
We got out there with some of the theories. By the way, we don't necessarily believe all the things we're talking about. It's just speculation and having a conversation.
Exactly, putting out the information to have an intelligent discussion.
All about discussion.
It's just weird to me how, like, for example, you have you have all these connections with all these symbols and stuff throughout history. Are the symbols fake, or are they actually legit? Or like, what is the meaning of having the fleur-de-lis, for example, in 85 BC all the way to modern times? Like, what is the significance behind that?
Right, like and some of them I believe are these like energy patterns, and that it's encoded technology or something. Or at a higher ancient level, but then it's been bastardized and like taken away since and misunderstood.
Or I think as well, right? I know this concept is nuts, but I think it goes back to that synchronicity shit, because time is not a concept outside of our reality. Like, it sounds weird, but hypothetically, you could do some kind of spiritual shenanigans or whatever, also, affect the world in some way now, which cascades back in time to things we've already experienced. Things aren't linear in the way that we experience them. To God, outside of our reality, things are not linear. So the idea that why something might stick around,
not linear.
well, yeah, that's what I mean. So a symbol that sticks around for thousands of years might literally be placed for that very reason.
Very true.
Also, if you entertain the idea of the missing time or distorted time, that kind of plays into it as well, because you have a lot of these buildings. For example, like John Levi made a video where he went to a random town in like Utah or New Mexico or something last week, or 2 weeks ago, and there was literally swastikas on this old building from
right. So that
like,
was a good one. Shout out John.
Well,
Levi.
again, look at it, right? So the swastika was the symbol for peace, wasn't it? So they bastardized it by not just turning it against peace, but so bad that you can't even show it without inciting violence. So this is what I mean. They flip the terms of everything. It's almost like spells, it's make everything the opposite. So yeah, that one talking about these are good, these articles, because they talk about if you get them in the right order, they'll talk about the individual cities that are being taken. So individual Khanate. So that one's obviously Khanate of Kokand, stuff like that. And it talks about them moving to these different cities and taking them.
That's really interesting.
There is one in here that I do say, this as well. This with Trojans. This talks about Trojans because obviously with the Troy to Britain stuff that I've been talking about. So that's good. But there's one where I say read the whole article because it talks about the entire conquest pretty much. So if you scroll down, you'll find one. It'll say in brackets, read whole article or something, read whole thing. And because there you go, Russia takes Khiva. So that's another place. So Kokand, Khiva. And then these are the battle plans, I think. Shows the way that they move through.
Upper Tartaria declares independence from Tartaria 1866.
Yeah, and so you can see the Russian government intends establishing commercial depots in Upper Tartary, which declared itself independent from China 3 years ago. So you keep going. So some of them are obviously similar articles. They're not all in order because they're just the order that I found them in. Yeah, there you go. You just went past it. Read whole article. See, to go up a bit. Read whole article discusses Russia's entire advances.
I'll open it. Why not? Let's see what it says. It's from 1868.
There you go. Yeah. So if you zoom in, you'll see where the article starts, just in the middle of that thing there. It says Russia triumphs in the east on the left.
Yep, I see it.
That's where you start. And that talks about the entire thing, basically. Obviously, don't go too detailed, but...
So one interesting thing about the Tartarians that is talked about in history is that every time if there are two Tartar tribes or kingdoms or khans fighting each other, before the battle would begin, they would actually play this musical instrument on both sides. I'm not sure what the significance is behind that or what exactly.
What instrument was it, out of interest?
I think it was from a goat's horn. I don't
oh
know
my god! But is it with a bag, with basically bagpipes?
It could be. I'll send it to you on. I'll look at
it. Because trust me, I've been getting into this. Right, the Picts in Scotland look like Tartarians, and guess what? As well as the Welsh being banned, the bagpipes and the tartan kilts were banned in Scotland as things of war. So yeah, think about that. The bagpipes, which are obviously Scottish, were banned, and the tartan kilts were banned. You gotta wonder, haven't you, if there's a connection here?
I'm looking up to see if I can find it real quick about the instruments. Just while we're here.
Well, there's definitely a connection.
Read this bit.
What?
I don't know what's going on with BurnEye. I don't know. He's talking to us from the shadow realm.
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah. Kaiba. I love Yu-Gi-Oh, man.
Okay, so the reason I brought that up is because when Genghis Khan had a battle with Prester John, they didn't play those instruments, so that means that Prester John was not Tartarian.
Right. Okay. Well,
according to that source.
Scroll to the top anyway, just of this article, so that I can just read a bit of this for us. It's all right. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just zooms in a little bit. So, starts off, a telegraphic dispatch dated London, May 30th and Bombay, May 25th, states that the Russians have captured the ancient city of Bukhara, one of 3 great cities of independent Tartary, and by far the most important point in Central Asia. A terrific battle resulted in the utter defeat of the Bukharian troops and the death of the Khan. At the close of the 16th century, Russian dominion was acknowledged only between the Ural Range and the Yenisei River, a region about as large as the entire Mississippi Valley. A century later, Russia had appropriated the remainder of Siberia, an immense region including Kamchatka, and as large as the entire territory of the United States. During the last century, the nominally subjugated the Kyrgyz and... Well, you're scrolling too fast for me. During the last century, she nominally subjugated the Kyrgyz country south of Siberia. Between 1840 and 1853, she pushed her southern boundary in Asia down to about the 45th parallel of latitude along the river Daria, which empties into the Sea of Aral, so the Aral Sea, and at the same time obtained possession of the territory skirting the seas of Okhotsk and Japan. So this is talking about 100 years, so 1 century. It's gone from Russia being a region that controlled the size of the Mississippi Valley to being a region the size of the entire United States, and it does not stop. So
it's documenting this war and takeover of Tartaria, the empire that supposedly doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yes. Well, this particular bit is independent Tartary, but obviously it starts off by capturing Siberia. So what I was talking about before when I said it moves east, that's what's happened. They've started off in Muscovite area, and they've moved east, and they've captured Siberia, all of that region, Upper Tartary, etc. And then they've gone back, and they've gone down the middle, captured all that region, and then Chinese Tartary has also declared independence from Tartary and gone to Russia as well. So,
wow.
And it looks like Bukhara is in Uzbekistan.
Yeah. So, in fact, I don't know if this goes into it, but they ended up putting a certain general who led a lot of these battles in charge of Turkestan, as they then named it. Once they'd taken over it, they'd changed it to Turkestan. And this guy was known as being so evil. He was honestly so bad. So we can carry on. So the Great Valley of the Amur fell into the Russian possession by a blunder of the Chinese commissioners, who have usually been outwitted by the astute diplomats from St. Petersburg. During the Crimean War, General Muraviev, who had been sent to provision the fleet, shut up in port by the Allies, occupied the mouth of the Amur. So that's the, I believe, is that the Amur River that's today, or is that different? Well, and he founded a town which is destined to become a place of great importance. Admiral Rutiatus, the commander of the Russian squadron in the Pacific, was shipwrecked in Japan during the Crimean War and succeeded in making a most advantageous treaty for his country. At the conclusion of the war, the Russian general and admiral, by adroit management, effected treaties with the Chinese government, securing to Russia the whole territory on the left bank of the Amur, and all on the right banks from the seacoast up to the first great affluent, beside the assurance of the same privileges and commercial advantages that might at any other time be granted to the other treaty powers. So what that's talking about there is what we saw before, that treaty that was set in stone with the Tartarians, with the Latin, Tartarian, Chinese, and Russian, the stone that we talked about. That seems to be what that's talking about. That same thing.
Right, and I just have to point out that, like, at this time where the little tiny Russian empire takes over and expands east, the royals, the monarchs of Russia, were related to the UK and to the German, right? Like, they were all one family. So it's like, they just invented this Russian culture, and really it was this Tartar culture and landmass and empire.
And according to mainstream history, all of those families originate from the Franks, which were the French Latinized speaking people.
Yeah, the French, exactly. That they all were the French-speaking royals and one family.
And once again, until the end of World War II,
to hate the French.
Maybe because until the end of World War II, people were speaking French as the common language around the world, and in the United Nations to this day, apparently that is the common language.
Well, the thing is, though, is I do worry because, you know, with the old flip, like we're talking about, so in England, we're taught to hate the Welsh, and then it turns out, the Welsh are the good guys. So I've been sat here like, oh no, it's going to turn out the French are the good guys, isn't it? So I'm really hoping
that's the whole thing where it ties back to the Jesuits and the Reformation. Is because if you do think that
the Jesuits are never the good guys, that's one thing.
That's the whole thing. Is like, are they?
And they sound a bit like Jesus, don't they? So maybe we shouldn't trust Jesus, and we should be trusting Enki instead. That's right. You know, that's my real job here. I'm just a missionary from the planet, fucking Sirius B.
I love it. All right. So on that note, shall we call her a day at the 3 hours? The happy Easter, the conspiracy of Jesus' resurrection actually being a faking of his death, according to ancient Historia. For more, go subscribe to his channel.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything good on my channel, so do not subscribe to it.
You have
follow him on Instagram, where he has lots of followers.
And what happened? Any update news with the Phoenix Protocol or their meetup or that movie made with action figures? And God, they're so good. You do great parodies.
I'm not gonna lie, when I saw that Archaics movie, I realized that it's more than likely just some random dude just having fun with his life and just being basically just being based, because like the movie was so weird. So like I don't know. I haven't really been looking into Archaics recently. His information once again is pretty good. Like he has historical references to a lot of stuff, but
exactly, like his books readings, like for all like the single nice old ladies out there that enjoy him reading nighttime books and history to them, like by all means, like nothing wrong with that. And should we take out my childhood Lego and do the Tartarian Lego brick? Maybe we can burn it down. We'll try the melted brick movies, see what happens. I don't know.
Could be fun, I guess. I don't know.
Illuminati confirmed. I like that one. Making a new Instagram and YouTube shorts. Illuminati confirmed.
All right then. Well, on that bombshell, I think we'll.
We love you all. Happy Easter.
Thanks for hanging out.
And don't forget to purchase drugs straight from David Attenborough. You can message me on Twitter with the handle drugs for you at David.
That's